ye, hear ye. All persons having anything to do before the Honorable David Logan, Justice of the Superior Court, now sitting at Salem, within and for this county of Essex, draw near. Give your attendance, and you shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This court is now in session. You may be seated.
Good morning, Your Honor. Calling Commonwealth versus Philip Chism. Docket numbers 2013-1446, 2013-1447, and 2014-109. Scheduled today for hearing on sentence imposition. If the parties would please identify themselves for the record.
Good morning, Your Honor. Kate McDougall for the Commonwealth. With me are Assistant District Attorneys David O'Sullivan and Melissa Woodard.
Good morning, Counsel.
Denise Regan, Susan Oker, and John Osler for Philip Chism, who is present.
Okay, and good morning, Counsel, as well.
Ms. Regan, I understand from Ms. Draper there's an initial motion.
Yes, I have a few hopefully brief matters. One, I'd ask that the court remove the shackles from Mr. Chism.
All right, that motion's allowed.
Two, yesterday I forgot to address an issue, and it's a issue that was raised in the juvenile's motion to correct enumerated errors in the pre-sentence investigation. And what that was the Fifth Amendment issue. There were some references in that report to Philip Chism's failure to participate in DPT groups and failure to be more forthcoming in his supportive sessions with his clinician. That was on the advice of counsel. I filed an affidavit to that effect. And I just note that under Commonwealth versus Handwright, it was clear from the beginning of the case that that would be discoverable. Statements made that were in the records on that would be discoverable by the Commonwealth. So I'd ask the court not to consider that aspect.
All right. Based on the court's ruling yesterday, that issue is perhaps moot, but that's allowed.
Next, I would ask the court to strike from the juvenile sentencing memorandum on page 31, the first full paragraph. In that paragraph, we talk about some testing results that Dr. Kinshirk did that was not testified at trial. It was inserted into the defense sentencing memorandum in response to an earlier draft of the pre-sentence investigation. Given the final draft of the pre-sentence investigation report and given the court's rulings yesterday, we'd ask that that paragraph be stricken.
All right. Ms. McDougall, did you take any?
In the courtroom today. More than 25 individuals in the courtroom. None of them, as far as I know, are associated with the district attorney's office. And and the reason that I object is that public displays, no matter how well intended and no matter how understandable, have no place in a court of law.
Okay. The court has ruled as it relates to employees of the district attorney's office, and that ruling will remain in effect. As to all others, I can assure you it'll have for the record.
And finally, Your Honor, as far as the way, I'd like to inform the court the way the defense would like to proceed in this hearing. I am addressing any legal issues. Mr. Osler is available to answer any questions that come up about parole and sentencing. And the sentencing argument will be done by Susan Oker. She is the attorney in charge of the Salem Youth Advocacy Department of the Committee for Public Counsel Services. Thank you.
Could we just be seen very briefly at sidebar?
And Ms. McDougall, it's the Commonwealth's intention, as you indicated yesterday, that the allocutions go first.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right. Do you have any preliminary matters before you call the first witness for allocution?
I don't, Your Honor.
Who would you like to go first?
I would call Susan Craig.
Is either one or the other one? Come right up there, miss.
Thank you. Thank you.
Your face is on.
Good morning, ma'am. If you could just tell us your name.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak for my family today on behalf of my niece Colleen, but I found it impossible to summarize all the ways Colleen's horrific death has affected my entire family and how one person has changed so many lives forever. This isn't something that words can capture in a paper or even be summarized in a book, because it is a lifelong change with new pain and heartbreak surfacing every day. The most I can do today is tell you about how we've had to live over the past 28 months since Colleen's death and the pain that is our new reality. We have a large and extremely close extended family, and not a day goes by that we don't all miss our niece and cousin Colleen. Family was everything to her, and now our family gatherings can never be the same. She loved to be involved in party planning and couldn't wait for everyone to get together, no matter what the reason. When one of us was having a bad day or had something to celebrate, she was always the first one to cheer us up or congratulate us in her own special way. She always knew exactly what to say and had a knack for choosing the perfect gift for every occasion. She was always thinking of others first and went out of her way to make sure we all felt special. Now, when Tom, Peg, Dan, and Laura come to Vermont to visit us, I wait for Colleen to walk through the door with them. In my head, I imagine she's outside at the car, still gathering her Vera Bradley duffel and her pillow, but she never comes in. I look for her flip-flops by the door, next to Peggy and Laura's, but they never appear. It has all ended. Now, where there used to be laughter, her cousins are plagued with silent moments when they get together because it's too hard to talk about what happened to Colleen, even though it's always present for them. Colleen and her older cousin Sam both shared a love for teaching. In fact, Sam was teaching in her classroom when she received the devastating news about Colleen. After that, Sam struggled when she returned to school, knowing that Colleen would never get to see her classroom again, and the dream they once shared together was gone. Colleen and my daughter Jackie were very close. They loved getting together. Even though Colleen was only 2 years older, she affectionately called her cousin Baby Jackie from the first time they met. Jackie misses the traditions they had created over the years, like conversations about what to wear at Easter, or taking that special picture of herself and Colleen with Dan in the middle at every family event. But now, Jackie lives with fear and doubt along with her pain. She no longer feels safe at her college, job, or anywhere for that matter. She's constantly has her guard up and no longer trusts people. Jackie turns 25 in a few months, but she is dreading this birthday because it will mean she has officially outlived her older cousin and friend. The youngest school-age cousins in our family are dealing with something no child their age can or should be asked to understand. Somehow they have to comprehend that they will never see Colleen again without knowing why. How can we explain it to them when we don't have the answers ourselves? There's no way to protect them from the gruesomeness of what happened to Colleen, knowing the infinite expanse of the internet and the relentless, unscrupulous demands of the media coverage. They aren't allowed to watch something like this on TV or in movies, but instead are actually forced to experience it in real life. Talking with our kids about what happened to Colleen is difficult because we don't want them to be afraid of going to school every day or being afraid of their world, though in fact it is now a very terrifying place for all of us. We lost Colleen on October 22nd, 2013, but the loss continues to increase with each passing day. Our whole family has had to watch a part of Tom, Peggy, Dan, and Laura wither away since that day and throughout this agonizing court process. They have all lost a part of themselves that they will never get back. Dan and Laura are bravely trying to maneuver through their new life that they've been forced to live without their big sister, while having to watch their parents suffer a pain that's bigger than all of them. The suffering and pain that Tom and Peg are going through is something we will never fully understand. We are able to go back to our homes with all of our children, something they'll never get to do again. They know that every milestone or family event since that day and from now on will be incomplete and imperfect without Colleen's smile, love, and excitement. Not only do they suffer the loss of their oldest daughter and sister in the prime of her life, but will always be reminded every single day of the horrific, inhuman, and evil manner in which she was taken. Coming to this courtroom for so long with so many delays, watching the person who did this to Colleen have no remorse or affect in the slightest, is simply more than any family should have to endure. There has been no rational explanation or reason for this crime. There's only pain, loss, evil, and heartache forever. Their world has been completely crushed in a matter of minutes by someone who shows no regret for his actions. We all know there was so much more that we have yet to endure. We, of course, move through each day now in honor of Colleen, trying to find the good and to live the way she would be living if she were still here. But she no longer has that opportunity. All her rights were taken from her without choice in an instant. She paid the ultimate price for no reason. However, her murderer did make a choice that day. He clearly chose to hurt Colleen beyond any human imagination. He also chose to hurt all of us who love her and now have to live without her. He chose evil that day and all the consequences that go with it. This is why we ask you to impose the maximum sentence allowed on this criminal. We have a responsibility to prevent this from happening again, and we owe that much to Colleen, who suffered at his hand for no reason, and will never get another chance at her life. This won't be over in 15 or 25 years for Colleen or any of us. We've all been sentenced to a lifetime of pain, heartache, and loss. This criminal deserves the same.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cruz.
Thank you.
Next, I would ask the court to hear from Gina McDaniel.
Ms. McDaniel, good morning. In a moment, I'll ask you to just state your name for the record, and you can please take your time. You can read your statement, or if you want to just let me know what you have to say, or anywhere in between.
My name is Gina McDaniel, last name McDaniel, and I am Peg's niece, Colleen's cousin, and I will also probably read. First of all, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak today on behalf of our family. When my aunt asked if I would speak, of course I said yes. The impact that this has had on our family, our friends, and even the community is just unbelievable. So I sit here today and try to put into words how we feel, how I feel. And I'm sure you realize this is an impossible task. So I'll start with how Colleen's life impacted ours. Colleen was always a happy little girl and grew into such a happy person. She was a joy to be around and had that beautiful, contagious smile that lit up a room. She simply made our lives happier. We all loved being around her. Sorry.
Take your time.
I love spending time with Colleen. I was actually her babysitter when she was little, and what started just as babysitting my cousin eventually turned into more than just that. We became good friends. She loved spending time with her family and friends, whether it was a family gathering, trips to Disney, or cruising with her friends all over the place. She was the party planner, but of course there was so much more to Colleen. She grew up to be an amazing, talented, and caring woman. We could always feel her positive energy when we were around her. She had a lasting impact on everyone that knew her and loved her. And what better way to impact the lives of others than to teach? She knew she wanted to be a teacher from a very young age, thanks to her lifelong mentor and friend, Miss Laura. She followed her dreams, and what an extraordinary teacher she became. In the aftermath of this tragedy, we have seen how much she has meant to her students and how respected she was by her peers. It truly makes me proud to have known such a wonderful person. When we lost Colleen that day in October, we were all devastated. I remember exactly where I was when I got the phone call from my mother. I was in utter shock and disbelief. No way could this happen to Colleen. Who could do this? What kind of evil exists for this life to be taken from us? How could something like this happen? Why? When I found out it was a student of hers that did this, I was horrified and angry. It was like he took a piece of our hearts and souls. I felt like my heart was ripped out of my chest, not only for myself, but for Peg, Tom, Dan, and Laura. The fact that they have to suffer the loss of their daughter and sister is cruel. Not only did we all lose Colleen that day, we in a sense lost part of Peg, Tom, Dan, and Laura. Life will never be the same for them. They will never be able to experience things the same again. The rest of us can grieve, but we can go home to our families and attempt to live our normal lives. I know I'm not the only one that still struggles with the fact that Colleen is gone. I can only imagine how much of a constant struggle it is for them despite the brave face that they put on every day. Peg's strength the most through all of this is just amazing. It's difficult to know that there really isn't anything we can do to ease their struggle except to just be there for them. Living so far from here tears me apart, knowing that we have such an extended family, though, makes me somewhat at ease that they have a remarkable support system. And speaking with some of our family members, I know there's an overall sense of worry about things. I have to admit that even I tend to be a little more apprehensive about even the basic day-to-day activities. It's hard to trust anything wholeheartedly. The last time I saw Colleen, she was visiting me in Florida in August 2013. I have so many fond memories of the Ritzer family visiting us. I remember this visit in particular so vividly because she loved spending time with my daughter, Riley. Everyone says how much my daughter looks like Colleen. My mother even says how much my daughter, Riley, reminds her of Colleen. She even has her smile. Sorry.
Take your time.
What hurts for me the most personally is that Colleen will never know my children. I wish I could turn back time and see her again and just miss her so much. Moving forward, we as a family will do our best to follow Colleen's words. Find good in every day and be good to people. Honoring Colleen's legacy is something that must be done now and always. The hope is that one day one of her students or scholarship recipients will make a change in this world, that Colleen had a part in that. We will think of her every day and know that in heaven she's teaching math to all those children and her love for it. We owe Colleen justice. She did not have a choice. He did. There will be a lifetime of heartache for our family. Please consider that in your decision.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Gannon.
Mr. Jefferson.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Berger. In a moment, I'll ask you to introduce yourself. Take your time, and you can present your impact statement in whatever manner you'd like.
Okay. My name is Jennifer Berger, last name Berger, and I'll just read as well. I met Colleen in kindergarten. In elementary school, we had the good fortune of being in the same class every year except 4th grade. What started out as an elementary school friendship evolved into a real-world friendship. Not everyone can say that their kindergarten best friend became their forever best friend, and for that, I feel lucky. When Colleen was taken from us, I had been friends with her for 19 years, practically her whole life. We were even planning a special vacation for the following summer to mark our 20-year friendiversary, a term we had proudly created ourselves. Being Colleen's friend always made me feel special. She was the type of person that others would want to be around because of her positivity and caring nature. During my busy seasons as a tax professional, getting through the long days were always made easier whenever Colleen would send me a text with words of encouragement. Colleen was the type of girl who liked to find quotes or song lyrics to share with her family, friends, and students on social media. Her ability to always know the right thing to say in any situation still amazes me. Colleen was one of the most empathetic people I have ever met. Colleen was so in tune with the feelings of those around her and genuinely cared about the people in her life. Colleen would always be there to support her friends and family in any situation. When a friend was struggling in school and unsure about the likelihood of finishing her degree, it was Colleen who was her constant source of support and encouragement. Colleen was a cheerleader when you needed a boost, a shoulder to cry on when you were feeling weak, and a hand to pull you back up on your feet. Every day since losing Colleen has been a struggle to find good. When I tried to remember the last day I was truly happy from morning to night, one day in particular came to mind. October 19th, 2013. That was the last day I would have the chance to see my best friend. They say you'll never know the true value of a moment until it becomes a memory. I never realized how accurate this was until I lost Colleen. At the time, it felt like just another day, but now it's full of memories that I'll always treasure. We had one of our girls' nights in my parents' basement, which always involved pizza, cheesy bread, Flips pretzels, the milk chocolate ones, and Twizzlers, but not just regular Twizzlers, it always had to be the pull and peel ones. That night, Colleen also convinced us to buy a 6-pack of a peach beverage that no one else really liked. The 3 of us each took 2, and my second one still sits in that basement mini fridge. I think the true sign of friendship is the only thing you need to get it to work is each other. Colleen and I would often just hang out in my basement or drive around in her car with no destination in mind. I don't miss doing things with Colleen nearly as much as I miss doing nothing with her and just being in her presence. I often find myself wondering what Colleen's life would have been like had she not been so cruelly taken from us. Colleen was only 24 and had so much to look forward to. She had so many destinations she will never be able to visit. She'll never experience Christmas in New York or visit the Full House house in San Francisco. Colleen will never be able to fall in love, get married, and start a family of her own. Colleen's dreams were so simple and never selfish. All she really wanted in life was to love and be loved. She will always be loved. When you lose someone you love, you also lose a part of yourself. Since losing Colleen, I have struggled with depression and anxiety that is hard to explain to others. Normal, everyday things now carry a sense of hyper-awareness and anxiety. Meeting new people comes with the challenge of trying to figure out when to let my heightened guard down and whether I should bring up Colleen at all. There's a piece of myself that I'm afraid to share with others. One of the best parts of me has now become associated with something unspeakable. I worry that those who knew me before my world fell apart will one day have had enough of listening to me talk about Colleen and seeing me cry and will want nothing to do with me. Even on the good days, I find myself feeling guilty to be happy. I still find myself reaching for my phone to text Colleen an anecdote from my day, only to realize she will never respond. So many days I've just wanted to hear one word from Colleen, or her laugh, to feel like she is still here and that the world makes sense. Colleen was irreplaceable, and I miss my best friend every day. The world is a much darker place without Colleen in it.
Thank you, Ms. Berger.
Sarah Giaquinta.
Take your seat and make your faces on it while you speak.
Ms. Giacinta, thank you for coming in to share your thoughts on sentencing. Take your time and let me know what you want me to understand as far as the impact of this crime on you, please.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about the devastating loss of Colleen Ritzer. I find it extremely difficult to describe how my life has been impacted since Colleen died, because every aspect of my life and the lives of those closest to me every day has been touched. Colleen was a gifted teacher, colleague, and friend. As a fellow math teacher at Danvers High School, I was able to see the spirit, knowledge, dedication, and kindness she brought to school with her every day. Her mastery of math and her ability to communicate it to her students was a true talent. She spent countless hours each week making her lesson meaningful, something that her students recognized and respected her for. Colleen cared deeply for her students, and after school, I would often find students in her room, some looking for help with math, others looking for advice on life. After Colleen died, students in her classes that year missed the opportunity to learn from an amazing teacher, as well as students in future years to come. Students who frequented her classroom after school were deprived of a connection with an adult they trusted and admired. As a result of the tragedy, students were lost, seeking connections to help cope with their feelings and daily struggles. They were forced to process a horrific event that no child should ever imagine. Some of these students are now in college and continue to cope with the loss of Colleen. Their world is knocked off kilter every time something about her death appears in the news, but now they are alone in an environment where people don't understand what they went through at Danvers High. I still receive emails on October 22nd each year from students I taught in the past, just checking in, missing the connection with someone who understands the struggles and feelings that they're dealing with. Colleen had a gift when it came to communication and people skills. As part of the math department and Danvers High faculty, she was always the even-keeled voice of reason in meetings. She was able to voice her own views and help negotiate compromises while keeping others calm. We greatly miss this every day. Colleen was always willing to create curriculum with others and share ideas. She and I used to spend each common free block together reflecting on our classes, what went well, what we could work on, activities to incorporate, or lessons and assessments to revamp. We would check in after school to see how the day went. She always remembered to ask how something went if I had something big happening in a class or a difficulty I was trying to navigate throughout the day. She was so thoughtful. After Colleen died, I was lost during the school day. I couldn't be alone in my classroom. I couldn't even walk past Colleen's classroom because it hurt too much to see someone else teaching in there. I lost my sounding board. She had an unwavering faith in whatever I was trying to do in my classroom. My friend. She was caring and compassionate beyond her years. She was the friend that I turned to first when something exciting or upsetting happened. She listened intently, shared experiences, offered sympathy, and gave sound advice with problems. No matter what, she was always able to look at the bright side of things, to find the good in every day and the good in every person. She had a love for life and a real soft spot for babies. I wish she could have met my son. There are so many memories I wish we could have had, but instead I can only imagine. In our last conversation, she offered to give me a ride home, knowing I was in the process of getting a new car. That was Colleen, always offering to help, always thinking of others, selfless. I was robbed of a friendship I treasured. The high school community shared an awful trauma together. Our sense of safety was violated in such a horrific manner. Not only were students and teachers grieving the loss of a wonderful teacher and colleague, but also we had to process the fact that it happened at our school, the place where we were supposed to feel safe each day. The details of Colleen's death touched on every part of our school day. Teachers were constantly on edge, watching out for students struggling with their emotions. Many teachers stopped using student bathrooms, even teachers in other districts. Students at DHS stopped using the bathroom where Colleen was killed. Teachers panicked when they couldn't find another teacher in the building after school hours. Teachers in Danvers, and even teachers as far away as Western Mass, took self-defense classes. Students stopped collecting recycle bins in barrels during the school day. Teachers became more cautious and more attuned to students' reactions to situations. We jumped every time we walked around a corner and someone was there. We couldn't handle watching people put on gloves or students wearing hoods. We couldn't walk into elevators without our hearts racing. We questioned why students were in our classroom after school. We were afraid to stay in the school building after the last bell of the day. We had a heightened sense of our surroundings when someone was walking behind us or we were walking outside after dark. Speaking personally, I still continue to have a concern for my safety that I never had before. I am a witness in the trial, a young, petite female teacher. I continue to cope every day. I miss Colleen's kindness and her dedication to her students and teaching. I miss her steady support at school, her positive outlook, advice, sympathy, and compassion. I miss her friendship. I miss Colleen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Giaconto.
Laura Fogarty.
So comfortable in this, and if you'll just faces on or as you speak.
Ms. Fogarty, could you spell your last name for me, please?
Laura Fogarty, Fogarty.
All right. Thank you for coming in and sharing your thoughts. And if you could let me know what you'd like me to understand for sentencing, just address your thoughts to me if you could, please.
First of all, I want to thank you for letting us, those who love Colleen, be heard. To sit in this courtroom day after day and hear grueling details during the trial and remain silent was incredibly difficult. So thank you. Colleen Ritzer first came into my life when she was only 15 months old. I was a fresh out of college preschool teacher, and she was the first toddler enrolled in my room. She had a smile that lit up the room, and I fell in love with her instantly. Even at such a young age, she had an incredible love of life and compassionate heart that resonated in everything she did. She flew in that toddler room every morning, dragging her mint green blanket, ready to take on her little world with unwavering enthusiasm. She was empathetic to others, even at that age. She was the first to come over if another child was crying and give hugs to make someone feel better. She possessed a joy that was contagious. During the quieter times during the day, she would always be found snuggled in my lap, and we became Miss Laura and Colleen, inseparable. I am blessed beyond belief that Peggy and Tom entrusted me with their baby girl. I loved her like my own, so much so that when I left my family in Georgia, my home now, to be here for that lengthy trial, my 16-year-old son said, "Don't worry, Mom, I know Colleen was your baby." Long before I ever came along, "I'll be fine. You go do this for Colleen." We had such a strong bond that the Ritzers have always included me as part of their family, and we will always be family. I'm deeply humbled to have their third child named after me. I had the privilege of being Colleen's preschool teacher for 3 years before she went off to kindergarten and I left teaching to enter the State Police Academy. Throughout the academy, Colleen's mom would mail me pictures she drew for me and notes written in her best little preschool penmanship. I miss you, Miss Laura. I love you, Miss Laura, and be brave. Throughout those years, we maintained our bond and friendship. And she was ecstatic to be the flower girl in my wedding when she was 8 years old. For many years in a row, we would make gingerbread houses together at Christmas time. She loved Christmas, and she couldn't wait for my son to be born so she could babysit him. She simply loved taking care of others. That's just who Colleen was. And I can still hear her hopeful little voice saying, Miss Laura, I want to be a teacher, just like you. One of the proudest things I've done in my life was being Colleen's friend and mentor. I was able to be there for the big moments in her life, like grade school plays and graduating from Andover High School, then Assumption College, and seeing her become the teacher she dreamed of being for so long. I was so looking forward to all the big moments that were ahead of her, finishing her master's degree, getting married, becoming a mom. And these moments now, they'll never happen, and they'll never happen because of what he chose to do to her on October 22nd, 2013. But it wasn't just the big things that made Colleen special. It was all those little things. She was one of those rare people that was so full of love for others and appreciation for everybody around her, and had such a positive outlook about everything that you couldn't help but be drawn to her. In her short 24 years, she embodied all that one could hope to become in their lifetime. She radiated hope. And I could go on and on about the loss felt without Colleen in my life, but you will hear next from her family, who are far more deserving to tell of the personal loss they have to endure day after day without Colleen. So if I may tell you in this courtroom what the world has really lost. All too often, we see people immortalized after they die, embellished characteristics and forgotten flaws. But I can tell you everything you've heard about Colleen's love of life and pure kindness is genuine and true. Her Scholarship Foundation website describes her as perpetual happiness, and there couldn't be a truer description of Colleen Ritzer. This past October 22nd, a movement was initiated to perform random acts of kindness in honor of Colleen. In only one day, well over 300 acts of kindness were carried out. This speaks volumes of who she was. And this didn't just happen here in this community. It happened all across the country. Kindness for Colleen hashtags were posted on social media from as far away as Florida, Texas, New Mexico. And just last month, I spent a week in El Salvador at a children's refuge, serving in her name. All of this done in Colleen's name, inspired by her loving heart. Colleen Ritzer touched lives, and she filled hearts, and she believed in the good in people no matter what. She loved her students, even tweeting them after the marathon bombing. I'm here for you if you need anything. We're Boston strong. She was making a difference in this world, right up until the moment she was taken from us. She was offering students after-school help and guidance if they needed it. She believed in them, and she was devoted to these students. And he took this gracious gift and turned it into a heinous crime. Colleen deserved the best this world had to offer, and in her final moments, she got the worst. And she didn't deserve this horrible ending to her life. The loss of Colleen breaks my heart, but not just for myself. It breaks for the ones who will never get to have Miss Ritzer as their beloved teacher. It breaks for the Ritzer family who will always have an empty chair at their holiday tables. It breaks for Dan and Laura that their future children will never be loved and spoiled by their Aunt Colleen. And it breaks for Tom and Peggy because they're carrying with them a pain no parent is ever meant to carry. And honestly, my heart breaks for all of us. It breaks for all of us because we lost a ray of hope the day Colleen was taken from us. This broken world we lived in needed Colleen. The positive Twitter message that would pop up during the daily grind. Find good in every day. Yay, math. Love those around you. And no matter what happens in life, be good to people. This broken world needed Colleen Ritzer. And I believe Colleen's influence in such a short period of time teaching was only the tip of the iceberg. She was going to make this world a far better place, and she was going to move mountains. And now there's no more bright smiles, there's no more yay maths, there's no more random, hi Miss Lara messages, how's Sean? There's nothing. Nothing but precious memories. I mentioned earlier I left teaching to join the ranks of the state police. And during my career, I spent 14 years in the crime scene services section. For 14 years, I saw firsthand dozens upon dozens of cases of violence. And I've seen hundreds of dead bodies. People who have been strangled, stabbed, shot, beaten, beheaded, raped. I've attended more autopsies than I care to think about. So I am no stranger to tragedy or cruelty, but this has rocked me to the core. To sit here and hear the testimony of the medical examiner describe the severity of Colleen's injuries was enough to make me physically sick. What he did to Colleen goes far beyond the realm of violence. His actions and the pain he inflicted on her was nothing short of savagery and pure evil. With all due respect, Your Honor, if I may ask you to consider sentencing, to remember not only these incredibly painful personal losses that you're hearing here today, but I also want to say I watched the police officers testify in this case. I saw the cracks in their emotional armor, and I listened to the mostly unshaken voice of your prosecutor. And I saw the faces of your jury when they were asked to look at that evidence, especially those photos. And trust me, those photos will haunt them forever. They have no doubt left an indelible memory they will never forget. All these good, decent, innocent people have been sentenced to a life sentence as well. They've shared our heartache, and because of that, they too have been forever changed because of the things he did to Colleen Ritzer. When the verdict came in, many people spoke of justice being served and the family having closure. And the truth is, as much as I respect our judicial process, the loss of Colleen has left such a gaping wound that there will never be justice or closure. That's just not possible on this side of heaven. We all know why the media is here today, to write about our heartache and to photograph our tears and sensationalize our pain. And I will never understand that, but I respect it. And I know come Monday, this courtroom will hear its next case, and the media will move on to its next headline. People will go about their business, and the world will move on. And to many, Colleen Ritzer will become a distant memory. But to those who know and love her, we will carry on her legacy of being good to people and finding good in every day, every single day. But we will also be forever broken. We will miss her shining light and her beautiful smile and her loving heart for the rest of our lives.
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg.
Laura Ritzer, Your Honor.
Thank you for coming in and sharing your thoughts with the court. If you could let me know what you'd like me to understand before I make a sentencing decision, Ms. Ritzer.
When you lose someone as close to you as your sister, you don't know how you're supposed to go on with your life. You go from having the time of your life to living your worst nightmare. Through this nightmare, I've had to tell the world who my sister, Colleen Ritzer, really is, aside from everything said on TV or in the newspapers. If I was asked who is Colleen Ritzer and what is she like, I would say she's the person who puts everyone before herself. She lived her life with a happy and positive attitude, never letting the negative things get in the way of her life goals. She was the type of person who could light up a room the second she walked in and could put a smile on anyone's face. She was the person who had so much pride and passion for everything she did and reached for. She was the type of person, the type of teacher who didn't just teach her students math and academics, she taught her students how to succeed and find their way in the world. She inspired many students to pursue a career in education, hoping they would be the people making a difference in the world someday. She would greet and smile at everyone she passed in the hallway or saw in her classroom at school. She would be her proudest when her students found a way to succeed, even at the hardest things in their life. Colleen went to school every day as a teacher who was there to teach them skills they could use forever in their life, and to teach them how to never give up on themselves. Whether she was your sister, daughter, family, friend, or teacher, she was someone you could count on for anything. She gave me hope when I didn't believe in myself, and she gave me faith that no matter what, everything was going to work out in the end. One thing she never failed to do was focus on the little things, and anytime anyone she knew was struggling, she would remind them of the little things in life that you could look forward to and put the negativity behind. Over the past 2 years, I would have given anything to have Colleen be at all the milestones we've passed. No matter the milestone, Colleen would always be the most excited, even more excited than the person who was actually celebrating the milestone. Colleen never got to celebrate my 18th birthday, see me walk across the stage of graduation and receive my diploma, move me into my freshman year dorm at the college she had recently graduated from, and so much more. Instead of having my sister in the stands at all my hockey games, I had to play in a charity game in pink jerseys, receiving flowers prior to the game in my sister's honor. In my entire life, the only games I've ever been afraid to play in were the championship games that had our season on the line. But in January of 2014, I'd never been so scared to step out on the ice. If you had asked anyone, they would say there's no pressure on me, and that no one had any expectations of me. But in my head, everything was different. My team and I were playing on behalf of the most loved teacher in Danvers, Massachusetts. We all, my team and the Danvers team, skated with the name Ritzer on our back. It didn't matter to anyone in that arena that night who won the game. All that mattered was that two communities were coming together in a time of tragedy. We should not have been coming together that night to honor Colleen. We should have been playing that game like any other game, where she was in the stands cheering us on. The only difference at this game should have been that she didn't know who to cheer for because she would have too much heart not to cheer for her students. Colleen and I spent all of our free time together, from going on Target trips to getting new decorations and supplies for her classroom, or just getting in the car and driving anywhere to make an adventure out of the day. In the summer of 2013, Colleen asked me to go to Danvers High with her and help set up her classroom. She was so excited to set up her new classroom, as it was the first time she would have her own room at Danvers High. This was the classroom she would come home from every day and tell her entire family all the stories she had from that day, whether about her students or just something she did. Every day was a new and different story. There were the good stories, the bad stories, and even some funny stories. But no matter what, Colleen took pride in telling us what happened while teaching that day. Colleen cherished and appreciated everything that happened in her life, and I truly am trying to follow in her footsteps in this way. As a 17-year-old high school senior, I was forced into hearing the words the police officers said to us late that night. I will never forget what happened that night, the drive to the high school, being sent to the police station to file the missing persons report. We sat there for countless hours, not being told anything, but it was obvious. They knew what was going on and they just couldn't tell us. I'll never forget sitting in that police station, forcing myself to think that everything was going to be fine, and that Colleen was going to come home with us. I will not forget not being able to watch TV for weeks after because Colleen's face was plastered all over every channel. I was protected by all those around me from the news reporters and the things being said, but in all reality, no one could protect me from what was happening, as we'd become part of one of the horrific news stories that everyone sees and hears about. After everything happened, I was forced to find a new way in life. I had to go back to school nearly a week later. I had to get the nerve to attempt to go back to my normal routine, and I had to come to terms with the fact that my life was never going to be the same. I knew my life was never going to be the same, but in my heart, I wasn't going to accept what happened. I lived my life hoping that this was just all a bad dream that I was going to wake up from someday. I sat in my house every afternoon hoping Colleen would walk through the door and come home from school. I wished I could go back in time and protect my sister. In the weeks following, I found I was never going to be the same person again. Without Colleen, we weren't the Ritzer trio or the three Ritzer kids anymore. I had to find ways to answer the questions about how many siblings I had without telling every person I met what had happened to my family. I found myself making up excuses and lying to avoid the hard questions I didn't want to answer. Eventually, I had to tell myself that this was my life now, and Colleen not being there meant I would dedicate and honor her in everything I did. To this day, I work as hard as I can to ensure that she's looking down on me, proud of what I've done. I've made a pledge to myself that I will never let Colleen's name or legacy die, and it will forever be a part of the Andover and Danvers community. My entire life, Colleen, my big sister, has been the person I look up to, my mentor, my idol, and my inspiration. As I am here today, there is one thing that must be said. He picked the wrong family to mess with, and we will never stop fighting. Colleen may not be physically here with us anymore, but we will forever and always be her voice, and believe me when I say, we will not let her down. We live our lives for her now, and that will never change. She always has a special place in my heart, and no matter what my family will have to attend in the future, we will be here, fighting until we get what we want. The Ritzer family will always be Ritz 5, and you can try to tear us down as much as you want, but we will find a way to bounce back, and we will not let this stop us. I hate the fact that someday I will be married with a family, and I'm going to have to explain to my kids why I have to go to parole hearings and why their Aunt Colleen isn't able to be a part of their lives. Nothing is worse than watching your own family struggle through the hardships of life. But like I said, I will not give up, and I will not let this define us. Do I hope the maximum sentence possible is given? Of course. Do I hope my brother and I don't have to attend parole hearings for many, many years? Absolutely. But one thing I really hope is that no family ever has to go through something as grueling and as difficult as this. I hope you've seen the toll this has taken on my family, and that you know we would do anything to have Colleen back and not be in this courtroom right now. What do I want to be doing right now? I want to be able to call my sister and tell her about all the things happening in my life. I want to celebrate the small victories in life, but instead, I'm here reading my victim impact statement to you about how the loss of my sister has impacted me. I'm here today in the hope that justice for Colleen will be served by having the longest possible sentence allowed. I know it's impossible for what we want to be allowed, but all I want is for my family to be at peace, even if only for a short while. Things will never be the same with my family, and we will never accept that. But we will accept the small victories in hope of making Colleen proud. Even 2 years later, I have not, and I never will, accept what has happened to my family, and I will always let my sister be my drive in life, knowing that she never gave up and found ways out of the toughest situations.
Just make yourself comfortable, take your time, and let me know what you'd like me to understand before I make a sentence.
Being kind and genuine to the people around me. She helped me whenever I needed it, and she put me in my place when I deserved it. She was the greatest sister a kid could ask for. Now I sit here today and attempt to put into words what my life has been like these past 2 years without her. Before this all happened, I was your average run-of-the-mill kid. I lived in a nice town, went to a public high school and a respected university, had a lot of friends, but most importantly, I was happy. I could wake up in the morning and look forward to the day ahead. I could drive to school or work, focus on the task at hand, and come home and be proud of what I had accomplished that day. I would love to talk about anything and everything regardless of how small. I would look forward to sitting down with my family for dinner, hearing about their days and joking around before finishing up and heading to our respective couches for the night. Maybe even watch some TV and talk with some friends, and then I'd lay down at night and be able to fall right asleep, ready for the next day to come. That was before a coward decided to take not only one special life that day, but 5. I now find myself fighting every second of every day. I wake up in the morning sad that the peacefulness of sleep is now over. I wake up every morning with the same thoughts on my mind. I wish I could go back. What could I have done differently? Why couldn't it have been me? I fight to get out of bed every morning, dreading the countless obstacles that I know I will face that day. I sit down and drive, and within minutes my mind is flooded with painful thoughts. I struggle to focus on even the most mundane tasks. I no longer like to talk about my day. I dread walking through the door of my house and feeling that empty presence again. I isolate myself, trying to control my thoughts and anger inside my head. When I lay down for bed, I am no longer able to simply doze off to sleep. The battle I fight all throughout the day is instantly multiplied the second I stop and close my eyes. I run scenario after scenario in my head of what I could have done, or what can I do now to make this right. I battle with the fact that this is now my reality. Nights often leave me awake for hours before my body finally succumbs and I fall asleep, only to wake up an hour later to repeat the process. There are no words to describe these feelings I encounter on a daily basis, but I will say this. You do not know pain until you are forced to watch someone you love be lowered into the ground. You do not know pain until you are forced to endure the sights of every person in your family collapse to the floor in tears. You do not know pain until you are forced to watch and listen to every gruesome detail in a public courtroom for months on end. The positive emotions that used to surround me no longer exist. My life now is simply long stretches of overwhelming sadness, pain, and anger, only to be broken up by small periods of distraction. Distractions that allow me to forget everything that is going on for just a brief moment, all before abruptly being brought back to reality. No person or family should ever have to endure what we have endured. No parent should ever have to bury their child, and no sibling should ever have to say goodbye to the person they thought would always be there for them. With that being said, I do not ask for your sympathy or your sorrow, but only to do what is right. Put this animal behind bars for the maximum possible sentence, and I beg of you, Your Honor, do not give this coward the opportunity to shatter another family's lives.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ritzer, if you could take your time, please, and if at any point while you're letting me know about what you'd like me to understand during the sentencing, you want a recess, let me know that as well.
Thank you. 2 years ago, my daughter Colleen's life was viciously and horrifically taken from her. She was brutally raped, robbed, and murdered in what she believed to be the safety of her own school. You're here today to determine the sentence for a killer for these 3 distinct and separate crimes. In order for you to do this, you must fully understand who Colleen was and how her loss has devastated our family. It is next impossible to put into words the impact losing Colleen has had, especially in such a horrific way. Hopefully I can give you a sense of what a special person Colleen was and how her death has crushed our family. Colleen was our firstborn, our baby girl, the oldest of 3 beautiful children. I'll never forget the day Colleen was born. It changed my life forever. I remember holding her, having no idea what to do, but also knowing I was holding the most precious gift a father could ever have, his baby girl. Colleen truly was Daddy's little girl. Colleen would later be joined by her younger brother Dan and little sister Laura. We were a beautiful family, one I'm certainly proud to be the father of. Colleen was not only my daughter, she was my friend. We would talk about everything, family, work, school, life, just about anything. We didn't always agree, but she always had good advice for me. I was supposed to be teaching her, but she often taught me. She was wise beyond her years. Colleen always wanted to be a teacher, even from a young age. She used to get upset with me because I would say you might be able to make more money doing something else, but she didn't care. It's what she always wanted to do. Colleen taught me that teaching was more than just about teaching a subject or money. It was about helping people and affecting their lives. She always knew that and stuck to her goal to become a teacher and became a very good one. Colleen loved teaching math and finding new ways to present the math in ways the kids could understand. Colleen was very organized and put an enormous amount of effort into everything she did. She worked for hours every day preparing for class. She absolutely loved what she was doing. Colleen worked very hard to reach her goals, and I'm very proud of everything she achieved. Colleen loved life. She was a very positive person, full of excitement, and always had a smile on her face. We have lots of pictures of Colleen, very few of them she is not smiling in. She would get excited over the simplest things most of us take for granted. She truly appreciated the small things in life. She loved her family more than anything. Dan and Laura were the world to Colleen. She watched out for them, took care of them, whether they wanted it or not. She loved spending time as a family, whether it was just us alone at home or on a vacation or at a family get-together. She loved being part of a big family. Her excitement for life was always there. Colleen was living at home with us, but wanted to get her own place closer to work. She was excited to move out and start her own life, and I was looking forward to helping her. I'm not sure why, but we always tell our kids we love them. Every time we leave the house or go to bed, we say, "I love you." We've always done this, since they were little up to today. Even though Colleen was 24 and ready to move out, we still told her, "I love you," every day. I know Colleen knew she loved us. I have no doubt about that. On October 22nd, Colleen's life was brutally taken and our world ended. The day started like every other day. Colleen came to our bedroom door before she left for work to say "I love you" and goodbye, just like she did every day. It wasn't until that afternoon when she didn't come home and Peggy hadn't heard from her we started to get concerned. As the day went on and we still hadn't heard from her, Peggy asked me to stop by the school on my way home from work. I work in Beverly, less than a mile from the high school, just on the other side of the airport. I went to the school after work, saw her car parked near it. I looked around the car. It was locked. Everything looked normal. I went in the school and asked a student where Colleen's classroom was. She didn't know, but pointed me to the second floor where the math classrooms were. I went to Colleen's classroom, room B209. Miss Ritzer was on the door. The door was locked, but I looked in the window. It was the first time I had been in high school or seen her classroom. I was excited to tell Colleen I had seen her room when she got home. I walked through the school and asked several people if they had seen Colleen. No one had. There was lots of activity and people around. I was sure Colleen was there somewhere. I just didn't know where to look. I thought for sure she was either there or out with some friends and had just forgotten to tell us, so I left the school. It was only during the trial that I fully understood where I had been. I had walked the same hallways, stairways, used the same doors that Colleen's killer had used just hours before to take her life. It makes me sick to know that. It makes me sick to know how close I was to Colleen that day and didn't help her. It makes me sick to know I drove by her in the woods and went home. After we still hadn't heard from Colleen, Peggy called Sarah, and she didn't know either, but did know a student was missing. Peggy, Laura, and I drove back to the school. A police car was there now. We met Sarah, the principal, the superintendent, and went to the school office. Someone was looking at surveillance videos. They still didn't know where Colleen was, but it was clear something was wrong. About 11 p.m., they told us to go to the Danvers police station and fill out a missing persons report. We followed the superintendent there and filled out the report. The police waiting room was small and had 4 chairs near a window. The officer told us they were trying to ping Colleen's phone to get her location. For the first couple of hours, the officer would come out and give us updates, and then he stopped. Peggy, Laura, and I waited in those chairs for hours. A few people came and went. At some point in the night, I heard a helicopter in the distance. It was not moving. It was just staying in one place. I knew that was not good. Then someone came out of one of the back rooms, and I overheard them say, "Crime scene." I prayed constantly that night. First I prayed they find Colleen and she'd be safe. But after I heard the helicopter and the words "crime scene," my prayers changed to "please, don't let it be Colleen." There was a doorbell in the waiting room to ring to get inside. At 4 a.m., I was going to ring the bell, but was afraid to because I didn't want to know. I was standing to ring the bell when 2 men came and got us. They brought us into an office and told us Colleen was dead. She had been killed by the missing student. Our world ended at that point. They left us alone in the office. We cried and cried. Peggy called Dan and told him. Around 5 a.m., an officer drove us home. At home, Peggy, Laura, and I sat on the couch in shock, crying. Peggy's brother and wife came over and started calling everyone. The rest is a blur. 2 years later, I still can't believe this is true. How could something so terrible happen to Colleen, someone so good? I know it's real. I know Colleen is gone. It's just unbelievable. I drive through Danvers every day on my way to work. I will never go near that high school or police station again. I hate doorbells. Anytime I hear a helicopter, I'm right back in that police waiting room that night. I'm not ready to accept this. and don't know if I ever will. It is unacceptable. I will, however, move forward for Peggy, Dan, and Laura. Colleen would want that. Colleen lost it all that day for absolutely no reason. There's never been a rational reason or explanation of why this was done. Colleen did nothing to deserve this. She only wanted to help people, and I know that's all she was trying to do that day. Colleen will never get to have her own life. She will never meet her husband. She will never have her own family or home. Colleen loved her family and friends so much, she would have been so excited about having her own kids to raise and teach, and her own family to love and watch grow. She would have been a great mom and wife. I will never get to walk Colleen down the aisle at her wedding. I'll never give her away at the altar, or have that father-daughter dance at her wedding. I so look forward to doing that, and watching her raise her own family, and have her own home. I hate she'll never have that. This has devastated our family. Losing Colleen was the last thing we ever expected, especially in such a horrific way. Our family had a simple life, but it was all we ever wanted. We were happy. This crushed our world. Dan will never get to have his big sister be a part of his life. Colleen would have been so excited to see the great man he's become, and would have loved being part of his life. Laura lost her only sister and her best friend. Colleen and Laura loved each other so much, they did so many things together. Laura will never have Colleen's love and excitement in her life again. Peggy is absolutely crushed. She lost her baby girl, her daughter, her best friend. Colleen loved her mom so much, you could tell in Colleen's excitement to tell her mom everything, and Peg loved hearing it all. And I lost my beautiful little girl. Colleen was my daughter, my friend, someone I could go to for anything. I didn't protect Colleen. My dad's job is to fix things. I would do anything if I could fix this for Colleen. Get that water. That one. The past 2 years of court proceedings have been heartbreaking, infuriating, exhausting, and extremely difficult, especially the trial over the last few months. The trial has taken its toll on Peggy and I, both physically and mentally, but we would not have done it any other way. Peggy and I have attended every part of this legal process and will continue to for Colleen. Colleen's life was brutally taken from her, and we will make sure her killer is punished. Learning and seeing each detail of what happened to Colleen is unbearable, but nothing compared to what she went through. Watching Colleen on the school surveillance video was very difficult. It was nice seeing Colleen talking to Sarah in the hallway, being happy, just being her happy, fun self. That was Colleen. The hardest to watch is Colleen leave her classroom, smile, wave goodbye, and go to the bathroom. You could tell she had no idea anything was wrong. She was not scared, she was not concerned, she did not know anything was wrong. I just wanted to tell her on the video to stop and go back. Don't go into the bathroom. I can only imagine the confusion, shock, panic, terror, and agony Colleen must have gone through. Colleen only wanted to help people. She must have been so confused and scared. I pray Colleen did not suffer, but no, she did. She must have been terrified and endured terrible pain. I know Colleen fought hard for her life, and it was horrifically and brutally taken from her. I know she never gave up. Colleen will always have more courage than the coward that did this to her. How anyone could do this to Colleen is unbelievable. The horrific acts done to Colleen are sickening. How something so terrible could happen to Colleen, someone so good, is unreal. But it did. The attack happened in the middle of the day in a public school with no concern of being caught. To put Colleen in a recycle bin as if she were trash and take her into the woods to further attack her and violate her is evil. This was a deliberate, planned attack that was carried out and followed up by smashing her phone and using her credit cards. Her killer knew exactly what he was doing. and has never shown remorse. I hate Colleen's killer and will never forgive him. He is evil, pure evil, and must be punished. After we lost Colleen, we at least had the knowledge her killer would be punished. But on Christmas Eve 2013, even that was taken away when the Massachusetts Supreme Court removed automatic life without parole sentences for juveniles. This was just another blow to a family that had already been crushed. I understand automatic life without parole may not apply to all cases, but it does to some. This is one of those cases. Removing a judge's discretion to decide that is wrong. Colleen's killer deserves the death penalty. Since that is not an option, he deserves life in prison without parole. Since that is no longer an option either, he must be sentenced to life with a maximum parole eligibility for each of the 3 crimes. Which must be served consecutively, not concurrently. Your Honor, this was a deliberate, planned attack that was horrifically and brutally carried out. Colleen's killer knew exactly what he was doing. He has never shown remorse, and even attacked again in frighteningly similar actions. Colleen's life was brutally taken from her with no choice. She will never get a second chance for her life. Neither should her killer. I was not able to protect Colleen that day, but I will make sure her killer is punished. You must imprison this killer for the rest of his life. He must never be free to hurt anyone again. Colleen deserves this in honor and respect of her beautiful life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ritzer.
I would ask the court to hear finally, Your Honor, from Peggy Ritzer.
Ms. Ritzer, take your time as you go through your sentencing impact statement, and if you want to recess at any point in time, please let me know. And let me know what you want me to understand before I make a decision, please.
Colleen matters. Colleen's life matters. Colleen is not a victim, body, or the deceased as she has been described throughout this trial. She is not the slain or murdered Danvers High School teacher as always portrayed in the media. Colleen was a caring and loving young woman, full of life and a beloved teacher. We are here today because you have the profound responsibility of determining the sentence of Colleen's killer, whose name does not deserve to be spoken, not only for her murder, but also for the rape and the armed robbery, 3 very separate, deliberate crimes. Your decision is limited under the new so-called juvenile sentencing rules. Yours is a significant responsibility. First and foremost to Colleen, then to her family and friends, the Danvers High School community, and all those deeply affected by the loss of Colleen. You also have the responsibility of setting a precedent for these new sentencing laws, though we hope that no family is forced to endure the agony we have endured since October of 2013. Our family appeals to you to set a precedent that sends a clear message to criminals and respects the memory of our loved ones. Today, following years of proceedings and the trial, we finally turn our focus to Colleen. As you consider a sentence, I want to share with you who Colleen is, what our lives, those of us who love her and will continue, who loved her and are and will continue to be without her, and remember how much she suffered in the brutality of the attack. Colleen is a person, a loving daughter, sister, granddaughter, niece, cousin, friend, and teacher. Colleen's life mattered to so many people. I want to share with you who Colleen is and will always be to me. Colleen is my daughter, my firstborn child, the oldest of my 3 children. I wish for nothing more in life than to be a mother. And on Saturday, May 13, 1989, the day before Mother's Day, Colleen was born and made me a mother. I always told her that she was the best Mother's Day present that I ever received. Colleen helped teach me how to be a mother. Colleen was your typical oldest child in many ways. She lived by a routine and was an overachiever. She was a happy and easygoing little girl. She was kind, loving, and motherly at an early age. Colleen loved when she became a big cousin to her cousin baby Jackie, who over the years was more like her sister. At 3 1/2, she became a big sister to her brother Dan, and several years later to her baby sister Laura. She loved being a big sister more than anything else. Because I worked, Colleen spent many hours caring for Dan and Laura over the years. Colleen helped make them into the strong and caring young adults you saw today. I see so much of Colleen in each of them. Colleen was a good, kind, and caring person. She was someone who stepped in and stepped up in time of tragedy or sadness. She did not shy away from it. She wanted to help make people feel better. She wanted to bring happiness to people during difficult times. Colleen worked tirelessly. She strived academically to do well so that she could achieve her goal of becoming a math teacher. She worked hard to get good grades, graduating from Danvers High School in 2007 and magna cum laude from Assumption College in 2011. She quickly realized her dream of becoming a teacher when she began teaching in fall 2011 at Hill Middle School in Stowe. Colleen began teaching at Danvers High School in fall of 2012. Colleen carefully chose the schools to which she would apply, her own safety being a primary concern. She believed Danvers to be a safe place to teach and where she could share her love of math. She was very happy teaching there. Colleen was very passionate about what she taught. She looked for creative ways to help her students understand difficult concepts and to enjoy math. She made her students want to learn. In her first year at Danvers High, Colleen did not have a classroom. Instead, she shared one, moving to different classrooms throughout the day. In the fall of 2013, a year after she started at Danvers, Colleen was assigned her own classroom. She was so excited in setting up and getting ready for her students. I never had the opportunity to see Colleen teach, something I wish I would have loved to have seen. Our family, though, has been fortunate to learn what Colleen was like as a teacher from the many letters, notes, and cards we received from her students. The following is an excerpt from a note from a student which summarizes the many messages we received to help you understand the teacher that the students lost that day, her current and former students, and the students she had yet to have. A ray of sunshine is defined as a brightness or radiance, cheerfulness or happiness. When you think of a ray of sunshine, you think of positivity, light, or joy. The best way I can describe my junior year algebra teacher is by saying that she was simply a ray of sunshine. Miss Ritzer amazed me from the get-go, and I knew that this was someone I would aspire to emulate. She stood out, and I always went the extra mile to do what she needed in order to help her students succeed. I remember walking into her classroom every day and seeing nothing but a smile on her face and such eagerness to teach. It was evident that she was passionate about her work and did not take very long for me to realize that I was in the presence of someone special. She was someone I could confide in when something was wrong, and as the year went on, I found myself looking forward to math class. I knew that in Miss Ritzer's class, I was guaranteed at least 55 minutes a day of pure positivity. I cherished that gift because I knew it was something extraordinary. This is the teacher that he took away. The simple things in life made Colleen happy. She looked for the good in every day. In the summer of 2013, Colleen began keeping this jar, where at the end of the day, she would write down on a small piece of paper something good from that day. The goal was to open the jar at the end of the year and reflect on all of the good. Sadly, she never made it to the end of the year to reflect on those good memories. To prepare for today, I finally opened the jar and read through what she had written. Although painful to see her handwriting on each of these notes and to recall the memories, I did so with the hope to help you understand how truly simple things brought joy. A few of the 2013 memories in the jar. On August 28th, making progress setting up the classroom. September 22nd, Laura's hockey game and hot pink cake. September 26th, successful open house at school. October 5th, out to dinner with Mom and Dad. October 19th, pizza, drinks, and Red Sox game with Jen and Mary. We're going to the World Series. 4 days later, on the evening of October 23rd, the Boston Red Sox and more than 38,000 fans paused prior to the start of Game 1 of the World Series at Fenway Park to honor Colleen with a moment of silence. October 21st, her last memory, chocolate cream pie. Colleen had a smile that lit up her room, an infectious laugh that would instantly make others smile. One of the best adjectives to describe Colleen both as a child and as an adult, is excitable. It is one of the things I miss the most about her. The littlest of things would bring excitement to her face. It would put that bright smile on her face, a glow of pure joy and happiness. In most conversations with Colleen, that ever-present excitement in her voice would be present, even when describing something as simple as how her school day had gone. You, Your Honor, saw that smile and excitement in the video that was played here in the court during the trial of her and Sarah in the hallway outside her classroom that day after school. What you saw in those clips is exactly who Colleen was, happy. She would share her excitement through her use of yays. There was a yay for just about anything. Her yay math, her yay proofs, yay babies, it didn't matter, big or small. She was always more excited for Dan and Laura than they were for themselves. It is who she was. And then there was Christmas. Christmas music, ABC Family Countdown, watching Home Alone for the 100th time, to Christmas morning. At 24, she had the excitement of a 5-year-old when it came to Christmas. She had that excitement not just for herself, but more importantly for Colleen, for others too. As you have witnessed throughout this trial, by the presence of so many, Colleen loved her family more than anything, and they her. Spending time together was one of her favorite things to do. She loved family gatherings. She would try to come up with reasons for all of our extended family to gather. Many of her cousins were like siblings to her. We come from a very large family, and everyone is very close. Colleen was central to that. She loved her friends, from just spending time with them doing simple things. She loved her life, and she embraced everyone in it. Her intense love of family was also reflected in her chosen career, one that she aspired to since preschool, where she had Miss Laura as her teacher. Colleen loved teaching. She had no doubts about the profession she had chosen. She loved planning her lessons and loved her students. She had established a set daily routine that she rarely wavered from. Tuesday, October 22nd, started just like all her other school days. Colleen popped into our bedroom at 6:15 to say goodbye. That would be the last time we heard her voice. And I struggle because I can't remember if I said goodbye. That was the day evil crossed her path. I will never understand how such evil could exist in this world, or more importantly, how such evil could cross Colleen's path. A path of unwavering love, caring, and kindness. As I previously testified, when Colleen didn't arrive home as she ordinarily did, I tried calling and texting her. I still have my final text to her, saying, "Where are you? If you are driving, don't answer." She never answered. The events of that afternoon and early that evening I've already testified to. When receiving the phone call from Todd, Tom, myself, and Laura, who was only 17 at the time, headed to Danvers High School, having no idea what we were heading into. Had I known that something so horrific could have happened, I never would have brought Laura with us. As instructed, we left the school to go to the Danvers police station. We sat at the police station for many hours. After a short time, I called Dan, who was away at school, to let him know that Colleen was missing, but to stay there and I would call him when I knew something. At one point, we heard that the missing student was found. I thought things were going to be okay, that something must have happened, but if the student was found, that Colleen would be found. But again, we waited for hours for any news.
Take your time, please.
And then we saw several police officers walking towards us, and I knew it was bad. They called us into a room, and with Laura, at 17, by our side, we were not told that Colleen had been found, but that they had found Colleen's body in the woods. The student, and they said yes. I then had to call Dan at school and tell him that Colleen was dead. I told him to get a friend and to come home. I wish I had done things differently that day. I wish I had called sooner, that I had left Laura at home when we went to the school, and that I had not told Dan over the phone. I wish I could have helped Colleen, but no one could have helped her that day because no one knew what evil sat in her classroom that day. That moment in time has forever changed my family and my family's lives. Our lives will never be the same. We will never feel the happiness we did before that horrific day, and the gaping hole in our lives will never be filled. We will never get a second chance to be with Colleen. The absence of Colleen from our lives grows stronger with each day and with each family occasion. Her bedroom, her place at the dinner table, and her spot on the couch where she prepared her lessons sits empty day after day. Dan and Laura lost their big sister that day, their first friend, mentor, and first teacher. Other than a teacher, the only thing as a child Colleen wanted more was to be big sister. She loved that role more than anything. I miss hearing the banter between them. Colleen had totally different relationships with Dan versus Laura. Colleen spent many hours caring for Dan and Laura after school. Dan loved to pick on Colleen because she was an easy target for him, and Colleen would just laugh. She would try to give Dan advice, which sometimes he didn't want to take, although he knew she was right. Dan left for college in August, and that was the last time he saw his big sister. He left for college only to return to a house with an empty room. As a little boy, Dan would sneak into Colleen's room and sleep on the floor next to her bed. No matter how many times we put him back in his room, we would always find him the next morning in Colleen's room. Now, every day, he walks by Colleen's room, an empty room. Dan's last 2 years of college are a blur to me, and I feel like I missed out on being there for him. He turned 21 less than a month after that horrific day, and Colleen was not there to celebrate that milestone and have a drink with him. Dan graduated from college this past May without Colleen there to cheer him on. She would have been so proud of what he has accomplished under such difficult circumstances, as are Tom and I, and she would have been so excited for him. Colleen will not be there for Dan's wedding, never be an aunt to his children. They will never be able to have the relationship that adult siblings have. Laura lost her only sister that day. October 2013 was the beginning of her senior year of high school, which should have been one of the best years of her life. Instead, it was one of the most horrific times of her life. She heard things no teenage girl should have had to hear. Her life and decisions she needed to make regarding her future were severely altered that October day. It was time when she was applying to colleges and trying to make a decision on where she wanted to go. The effects of that day significantly impacted that choice of where to go to college. Distance from our home was now an important factor because we knew that the trial would take place while she was attending college. Her safety at college became a major factor in the decision. Colleen had been so excited for her as she looked at schools. Colleen, as much as she loved having Dan as a brother, loved having a sister. From the day Laura was born, there was a close bond that only can be found in sisters. Colleen was the second mother to Laura. They spent so much time together growing up. Colleen would take Laura to hockey, would cheer for her from the stands. She would help teach Laura to drive, and she would take her prom dress shopping. All the things big sisters do. Laura will not have her big sister there to be her maid of honor on the day she marries, and her children will not have an aunt. As Laura mentioned earlier, on January 20th, 2014, Laura skated onto the ice as co-captain of the Andover High girls hockey varsity team, all wearing pink jerseys to honor Colleen to play the Danvers girls. I could only think of how excited Colleen would have been to attend, because she would have had to decide whether to cheer for her baby sister, as she always did, or cheer for her students from Danvers High. Instead, Laura took the ice, not with Colleen in the stands, but to observe a moment of silence in her memory of her beloved older sister. Laura graduated from high school in June of 2014 without Colleen there, and started college without her there to share in the excitement. Colleen was Laura's biggest cheerleader in life. Laura has had to endure the many legal battles and the lengthy trial through the first year and a half of her college life. Again, years that should be the best times of her life. Colleen would be so proud, as are Tom and I, of what Laura has achieved under such difficult circumstances these past 28 months. But on that October day, Dan and Laura not only lost their sister, the sister they loved, they lost their parents, especially the mother that they knew, the person that I was, the person that I will never be again. Instead, they now have a mother who is so very broken. Dan and Laura now parent Tom and I as they try so hard to help get us through each day, to try to put smiles on our faces. For 24 years, I had Colleen by my side to love and to be loved by her. And for 17 years, I had 3 children in my home. These are my 3 children. This picture represents so much to me. First, this is the picture of Colleen in the pink shirt that will be recognized by many as the picture that flashed across TV that day and many days since. We were under tremendous pressure from the media that day as they waited outside our home to provide a photo of Colleen. This picture was taken in June 2013 at Colleen's cousin's graduation party. It was one of the most recent pictures that we had of Colleen, and she had that incredible smile on her face. We cropped this picture to give to the media so they would leave us alone to mourn in private. But what this picture more importantly represents to me is the last picture I have of my 3 children together. This was the last family occasion that we were at with all 3 kids and knew it was an ideal time to take our annual picture of the 3 kids to be used for our Christmas card. One of the most difficult things to do now is to take a picture of my children. I love Dan and Laura with all that I have, but to take a picture of the 2 of them together brings so much pain because Colleen's absence from the picture is overwhelming. There is supposed to be 3 children in the picture. There was always supposed to be 3, and there will never be 3 again. Life will never have the same joy and happiness that it once did for me. There will always be the empty seat. Time only makes her absence more noticeable. Time does not lessen the pain, it strengthens it. Too many family times when Colleen should be there, and her absence so strong. Colleen loved doing things together, and she always loved just being home, so we spent a lot of time together. Colleen was the age where I could be her friend, and not just her mother. I will never have that opportunity now. She was ready for the next chapter in her life since she was happy with her career. She was going to school to pursue her master's and making plans to move out with her friend. She was at the point where she was ready for her personal life to be her priority. She wanted to meet someone, to marry and have children. I will never see Colleen in a wedding dress. I will never see her walk down the church aisle that we would often talk about before or after Mass. And I will never see her be a mother, the thing she wanted most to be. Tom and I will never be a grandmother and grandfather to Colleen's children. I know her kids would have had an amazing smile in her loving kindness. Colleen loved babies, loved kids, and Colleen would have made an amazing mother. Evil took all that away from Colleen and from me, Tom, Dan, and Laura. Every holiday, especially Christmas, is so very difficult. Colleen's birthday, the anniversary of that horrible day, and the 22nd of every month is filled with such pain. And weekends are so very difficult because the house is so empty without her. Sundays especially because Sunday afternoon was our family time. I finally saw her classroom that day in court when the pictures were put up on the screen. I saw 2 things when I saw that picture. Her Assumption College banner hanging on the wall, and her blue coat hanging on the back of her chair because he had forgotten to steal that. Colleen and our family did everything right. We loved each other, we took care of each other, we worked hard, and we followed the rules. We raised our children to be good, kind, and loving people, and in a matter of minutes that evil took it all away. Colleen did nothing wrong other than to try and help him, and he devastated our lives by taking her life away. The loss of Colleen has taken a physical and an emotional toll on me. Enduring this legal process and sitting through court appearances, reliving that horrific day and learning the details of that day, seeing the physical evidence from that day, have taken a tremendous toll on me and my family. We've endured all this in the public eye. I have difficulty sleeping because I can't stop thinking about that day and the fear and the pain that Colleen suffered. But the emotional toll has been the worst. I do not like the person that I have become. I used to see the glass half full. I, like Colleen, was happy. And now I am lucky to have a day where I get as high as feeling empty. Now I isolate myself from the people I love because pretending to be happy is so very difficult. Putting the fake smile on my face and telling people I'm okay is draining. Remaining composed in court during the many hearings and lengthy trial in order to be respectful of this court was physically and emotionally draining. I have tremendous anger and I am afraid for my children's lives in a way I never was before. Just getting through each day is a struggle. I have difficulty focusing on anything as my mind continually wanders to that horrible day, especially after learning all the horrific, brutal details in court. I struggle with my faith because I cannot believe that Colleen is okay, because how could she be okay after such brutal crimes? Every day there is something new that triggers the grief and anger, whether it be a certain date, a song, a picture, another legal battle. It can be anything. When we celebrate Dan and Laura or any of our family members, Colleen is always missing and therefore can never have true happiness again. Our family is incredibly grateful for the continued outpouring of support and meaningful tributes to honor Colleen. The sea of pink, which was often a topic during this trial, brings us moments of great comfort while at the same time brings great pain because it represents Colleen's absence. It always comes back to the bad, the evil that has sat before you without demonstrating any sense of remorse throughout the trial. On the news and in the newspapers, even when the stories about Colleen's continued influence on those she knew and never met, she is still always described as the slain or murdered Danvers teacher. Your Honor, this is not just one crime, but 3 crimes. There is no doubt that it was premeditated and planned. Colleen packed her school bag that day, just like she did every other day, with her books and her purple lunch bag, while he packed his bag, ready to take a life. Please allow me to explain the pain of each crime by sharing how we learned the details of that day. All we knew that night was that Colleen had been killed and that the weapon was a box cutter. We knew no other details as we went home to plan our 24-year-old daughter's funeral. Thank you. It wasn't until several days after Colleen's funeral, on October 31st, 2013, that we met with Ms. McDougall and her team, along with several of the police officers that had been there that night. Much of that meeting remains a blur, as I was still in shock. It was that day that we learned how Colleen had been killed, how her body had been found, that she had been sexually assaulted in the woods, and that she had been robbed. That her credit cards had been stolen, and that he had used them to buy himself food and to go to a movie. We were told that he would be charged as an adult, and that upon conviction, he would be given life in prison without the possibility of parole. We left, and we went home with the difficult task of explaining to Dan and Laura the horrific details because we wanted them to learn them from us rather than the news. It was in January 2014 when we were asked to meet again with Ms. McDougall and Ms. Leal. We met at the Lawrence Courthouse. I walked in the room. When I walked into that room, I knew what they were going to tell us. I asked the question before they had a chance to tell us that Colleen had been raped in the bathroom. As a mother, one of your worst fears for your daughter is that she could be sexually assaulted. He would now, in addition to the original 3 charges, be charged with sexually assaulting Colleen in the bathroom. This charge added to the horror of the crimes. We once again had to go home, as Tom talked to Dan, and I told my 17-year-old daughter that her sister had been raped, as I saw such pain and fear in her eyes. The emotional and physical pain was intensified when we received a phone call on Christmas Eve of 2013, following the Supreme Judicial Court's ruling that changed sentencing for juveniles convicted of first-degree murder by ruling that they could no longer be given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. It was devastating to hear that news, knowing that the legal battle would never end for our family. Instead of following the federal court's appropriate and respectful decision to extend discretion to the judges, Massachusetts took that law one step too far and took away your right to sentence him to life without parole. Because of that immoral and unjust ruling, our family will be forced to publicly go through this pain again as we have to fight to keep such evil person in prison where he belongs for life. As Tom and I age, that burden will fall to Dan and Laura, a burden that they should not carry. As we have sat through this very long trial and this very long judicial process, the horrific details of that day have been made known to all. You have heard and seen all the evidence, including statements he made that night to the police that clearly demonstrates that he knew exactly what he was doing and that he had a well-thought-out plan. You also know that there were 4 very specific crimes that day, even if he was only convicted of 3. As Colleen's family, we believe those crimes must be punished, separate and distinct from each other. Today, you have the responsibility to determine a right and just sentence. This case, your decision, will set a precedent for future cases. As Colleen's mom, her voice in this room, I urge you to impose the maximum sentence allowed to you under the restrictive SJC ruling. These sentences must be consecutive. They cannot be concurrent, as these crimes are separate and distinct, and the impact that each has had on our family is truly indescribable. You must remember that after he committed these brutal crimes, he calmly left and got himself dinner and went to a movie. You watched him calmly walk around the school on the video from DHS. There are two very important elements to that video from the school that I ask you to consider when determining the sentence for these crimes. The first is the video of Colleen talking to Sarah outside her classroom. Colleen wore her emotions on her sleeve. If anything had happened in that classroom between Colleen and him that would have caused her to be upset, or if she had thought she had upset him, you would have seen it on her face, and she would have told Sarah. Instead, you saw the Colleen that we all knew and loved, with the smile on her face and the excitement in her actions. The video of her walking to the girls' room clearly showed Colleen calm and happy, with no concerns at all. Second, and most important, is that throughout this trial, he would often be described as staring into space. However, you watched him, as did I, how intently he paid attention to himself on that video. He did not shy away from watching it. He watched every clip of it with great attention and absolutely no remorse. When that video was broadcast, he was the most alive in this courtroom, including during Ms. McDougal's closing. He never once flinched or showed any sign of remorse or guilt. He deserves the sentence of death for the brutal crimes he committed, but that is not an option. He deserves life in prison without the eligibility of parole, but that is not an option. You do, though, have the option to set consecutive life sentences with parole eligibility at the highest level that the court allows for each of these crimes. Please begin the long and painful process of righting the wrong of the SJC and legislatures. You have the responsibility for Colleen, for our family, and for the community to put him away for the rest of his life. Even after 50 years, he could still have a life, a family, children, which cannot happen. He is pure evil, and evil can never be rehabilitated. You need to consider the safety of our family and the rest of the community as we live in fear if he ever gets out of prison. Colleen and our family will never get a second chance, and neither should he. I will never forgive him for what he did to Colleen and for what he took away from our family. Today, you need to make the right, just, and brave decision to give him 3 consecutive sentences with the maximum number of years before parole eligibility for each crime. As I shared in the beginning, today we return our focus to Colleen. Colleen is often remembered for her inspirational quotes that she posted on social media, quotes by which she lived her life. They weren't just words on paper to her, they were pieces of who she was as a person. Her legacy is based on 2 of these quotes. On August 11th, 2013, Colleen shared on social media, "No matter what happens in life, be good to people. Being good to people is a wonderful legacy to leave behind." And on October 5th, 2013, she shared, "Every day may not be good, but there is something good in every day." This is the person that Colleen was and continues to be. And although I struggle that my 24-year-old daughter has a legacy, I am honored at what that legacy is and proud to be her mother. Today, the good must prevail over the evil. You need to remember that Colleen matters. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you who Colleen is and the impact her loss has had and continues to have on my family.
Thank you, Ms. Ritzer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The court's going to take a recess before sentencing argument. Court will be in recess.
All rise. Court will be in recess.
have some submissions first?
Sure.
At this time, I'd offer an affidavit of Cecily Reardon. I'd offer a chart of defendants convicted of first-degree murder when juveniles.
Yeah, okay. We can mark these when you get up to speak, if you don't mind.
Oh, that's fine, but...
Yeah, but go ahead, offer them now if
Yeah,
you want to.
okay. A small portion of the DYS medical records concerning Philip Chism. The 18A report by Dr. Merritt. An affidavit of counsel concerning my advice to Mr. Chism. And an article from Nature magazine, a scientific article, Rethinking Schizophrenia.
All right. I will look at the ones I haven't already read over the lunch break. Yes, please, Ms. McDougall.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, as the court is aware from the Commonwealth's sentencing memorandum, the Commonwealth's recommendation in this case is that as to the first-degree murder under which the defendant was convicted both on theories of extreme atrocity and cruelty and deliberate premeditation, the defendant should be sentenced to a sentence of life with the possibility of parole at 25 years. With respect to the two other convictions for aggravated rape and armed robbery, the Commonwealth is requesting that the defendant be sentenced to life sentences concurrent with each other and consecutive with the murder conviction with a possibility of parole at 25 years. I would tell the court that an enormous amount of thought, debate over the course of hours, if not weeks, and frankly agonizing went into the Commonwealth's recommendation. We have struggled to balance our commitment to the Ritzer family and their wishes, which were all too understandable, with the deep respect for the decision this court will have to make under the legal framework that I would suggest is unique and somewhat uncharted and where there isn't that much guidance for this court, with our fundamental mandate of ensuring public safety. Because as certain as the defense is that this defendant is capable, if not amenable, to rehabilitation, the Commonwealth, all of the investigators in this case, all of the prosecutors in this case, are equally certain that Philip Chism poses an enormous danger to the public in general and to women in particular, and that it is a danger that will not in any way be diminished by the passage of time or by chronological maturity. Your Honor, this case, these crimes go far beyond heartbreaking and horrifying that we deal with, unfortunately, every single day. Simply put, these are crimes that make one's soul ache. I could not ever hope to capture the loss that has been suffered in this case any better than the family and friends that the court has just heard from. This was, by all accounts, a remarkable young woman who not only gave an enormous amount in her life, but had an enormous amount left to give. Teachers change lives. And we know about the students that Colleen affected. We will never know about the students whose lives might well have been changed if she'd been given the chance. I will just say this, Ms. Fogarty spoke about the fact that often when someone dies, particularly when someone dies in such an awful way, we have a tendency to martyr them, to make them a saint, and somehow the truth of who they were gets lost a little bit. I can tell this court that the Commonwealth has heard too many times from too many different people the exact same description of this young woman as unbelievably optimistic and full of hope and happiness and committed to the small things in life and committed to her family. We see that smile that gets talked about again and again in every single photograph. We see it in the moments just before her death. A death she never saw coming, a death she never could have anticipated, in a place where she should have been safe, in a community that should still be able to feel safe and never will again. During the jury selection process, Your Honor, there was a gentleman who was eventually excused because a good friend of his granddaughter had to transfer schools because she never felt safe again at Danvers High School. That is fundamentally unfair to every one of those students now and in the future, to every one of those faculty and to every member of that community. It will never be the same Danvers again. It will never be the same Andover again. I'm not sure any of us will ever be the same again. The other aspect of this case that is so heartbreaking and that frankly challenges everything we think we know about justice and the justice system is the defendant's age. The Commonwealth takes no pleasure in asking for this sentence on someone who is 14 years old. We're not looking for a pound of flesh. It shatters everything we believe to think that someone this age could commit this crime. It shook investigators in this case to their core. And the Commonwealth did not shy away in any way from looking for answers, even if they would prove to be exculpatory, even if they would prove to be mitigating. We looked, we investigated, we went to Tennessee. We retained someone who is an expert on the juvenile brain. We embraced the juvenile brain at every stage of this process. If there was something to be found, if there was some explanation, if there was some mitigation, if there was some mental disease or defect that would somehow make something about what happened here make sense, we were willing to take it on. There isn't. I stand here today, 28 months later, with the enormous record that this court has, both what was heard in court and what was heard in other hearings and was heard in the mental health proceedings in this case. And I say with confidence, there is nothing wrong with this defendant that we believe that could be fixed or treated, or that in any way, shape, or form explains or mitigates what he did, or suggests to anyone that he has a real potential for rehabilitation and that he won't continue to pose a danger to the public. The guidance that this court does have in sentencing in this case comes from not only Diachenko, but the Costa decision, which certainly offers the court some guidance and the factors you can consider in forming a sentence in a case like this, to the extent there is any other case like this. And the court is certainly familiar with the Miller factors outlined by the Supreme Court in Miller. I would respectfully, they're obviously detailed more significantly in our memo, but I would walk through them briefly. Obviously, the first one is the defendant's chronological age and its hallmark features, among them immaturity, impetuosity, and failure to appreciate risks and consequences. Certainly, it is indisputed that the defendant was 14 years old and I believe 9 months at the time of this offense. He was at the youngest range he could be to be prosecuted for murder as an adult. But I would respectfully submit that there is nothing about this crime that reflects immaturity, impetuosity, or failure to appreciate risks and consequences. On the contrary, everything we know about this defendant, everything in the record in this case, indicates he understands very well the consequences of his actions, at least as they have applied to him. The second so-called Miller factor is the family and home environment that surrounds the defendant. I would never presume to stand here and characterize someone's childhood or someone's life. I've done too much, spent too much of my career prosecuting child abuse to ever do that. Homes can be difficult for kids. Certainly there is conflicting evidence as to the extent of trauma, if any, that the defendant experienced as a young man, but there is no doubt that this was not a particularly healthy marriage that he witnessed, and that at a minimum there was a father who was absent and there was a mother who was struggling. There were a lot of moves, particularly there was a move from Tennessee to Danvers. There is also, particularly based on the testimony in this case, a wonderful group of people who helped raise this defendant, a wonderful group of people who supported and loved this defendant. There is also evidence that this defendant, unlike some of the concerns the Miller court voices, had the capacity to cope, had the ability in finding the Carter home, in relying on Claudia Rodriguez to find safe places for himself, to protect himself in the way that the Miller court worried that a child truly living in a badly abusive, neglectful, and broken family wouldn't be able to do. This defendant had those outlets, and that didn't change as dramatically as we would be led to believe when he moved to Danvers. This court had an opportunity to hear from the two young men who made a connection, in particular with this defendant. From a lovely young man, Ramsey S. Garcia, and from Kevin Hegel, who talked about how his and family embraced the defendant, brought them to their men's Bible study, made him a part of their lives. I'm not suggesting the move wasn't traumatic. I'm not suggesting the move wasn't difficult, but I would suggest it does not rise to the level of chaos and abuse and neglect that in any way explains what happened in this case or in any way justifies or mitigates the defendant's conduct. The third factor is the circumstance of the homicide offense, including the extent of the defendant's participation in the conduct and the way familial and peer pressures may have affected him or her. That's just not here. The defendant acted alone. He acted under no one's pressure. He was subject to no peer pressure of any kind. He was sober. He was coherent. He did this on his own, of his own volition. The fourth factor is whether the defendant might have been charged and convicted of a lesser offense if not for incompetencies associated with youth. For example, the defendant's inability to deal with police officers or prosecutors, including on a plea agreement, or the defendant's incapacity to assist his or own attorneys. Again, that's just not present here. There was no lesser offense. There was no plea bargaining. There was no time in terms of the evidence that was admitted in this case where the defendant didn't have the utter wherewithal to make whatever decisions he needed to make. The court saw that throughout this trial. The fifth is the possibility of rehabilitation. The defense in their sentencing memorandum submit primarily, I would suggest, based on the defendant's age and what they believe to be his psychological infirmities, that he is amenable to rehabilitation. The Commonwealth would respectfully disagree that anything about his conduct in this case suggests that he is, and I would only as to this very limited issue note what happened at DYS. There is nothing about what happened at DYS in June of 2014 that suggests this defendant is amenable to treatment. This defendant, once again, purposefully and planningly took steps to avoid detection, snuck down a hallway, and brutally assaulted a young woman in a bathroom for the sole purpose of considering whether or not the defendant is amenable to rehabilitation. The Commonwealth asked the court to consider that event. In terms of Costa going on beyond Miller, you are asked to consider, the judge is asked to appropriately consider evidence concerning the defendant's then extant psychological characteristics in the process of assessing the Miller factors. And the third factor is not particularly relevant to this case because it has to do with the defendant's post-sentencing conduct. So I want to return to that second factor regarding the psychological characteristics of the defendant that the court is aware. The court is uniquely positioned in this case, even before this hearing, to consider those factors because of the evidence that was adduced at this trial regarding the defendant's psychological condition or lack thereof, and I'm not going to. The court certainly is well aware of the evidence in this case, and I'm not going to repeat all of it. I would submit that what is significant about Dr. Nancy Heaven's testimony regarding the testing she did and the findings she made is solely to rebut the claims made in the defendant's memorandum regarding the importance and value the court should put on Dr. Jackson, on apparently Dr. DeVere, despite the fact that she never examined the defendant, on Dr. Merritt's limited findings in the 18A, although apparently the defense would like the court to ignore the further findings she made in the two competency reports, as well as the findings of Dr. Dudley. Nobody, to the Commonwealth's best recollection, who found the defendant to be suffering from any sort of significant psychological trauma at the time of this crime considered the evidence of malingering. And I would respectfully submit that you cannot credit that evidence unless they have at least assessed the possibility of malingering. We heard again and again that malingering doesn't necessarily mean there's not a mental disease or defect, and I'm not suggesting otherwise, but you have to at least factor it in. And if you don't, it's suspect. And nobody says that there is anything significantly wrong with the defendant's thought process, thinking, or psychology at the time of this offense, who has considered the possibility, the likelihood, I would suggest, and the overwhelming evidence of malingering in the aftermath. And I would respectfully tell the court, sometimes we just don't need the experts to tell us, to give us the information we need about how a defendant was able to function, about the psychological characteristics of this defendant at the time of this crime. Because in this case, we have video. This court had a chance to watch the defendant, to see the defendant in the minutes leading up to this crime, in the hours leading up to this crime from the time he arrived at school, in the immediate aftermath when he leaves that bathroom the first time, as he moves around the school disposing of Colleen's body, as he moves around the school afterwards, and even as he goes to the movie theater and to the BJ's. The defense suggests in their sentencing memorandum, and I expect will suggest again, that because this crime is so incomprehensible, and more importantly because The defendant is described so universally as being the way he was described as being in Tennessee and being in the time leading up to this crime. There must be something wrong. There must have been some kind of break. There must be something that suggests there's mental illness here. The Commonwealth would suggest that there's a different view of that evidence, of these factors, particularly in light of the video that the courts had a chance to see, and that this is a defendant who is capable of moving among us. This is a defendant who is capable of functioning and presenting as completely normal and no threat, while something very dangerous and scary is lying below the surface, while he is planning to do something truly horrific, while he has just done something truly horrific. He is able to have a conversation with Kevin Hebert that Kevin described for you, that you could see on the video, his body language, his demeanor, and no one would ever have understood what he had spent the last hour doing to Colleen. He was able to then go to the movie theater and buy a movie ticket, go to Wendy's and get a burger, and most tellingly, I would suggest, walk through the BJ's, and the court can see him, saw him, his body language, his, I would suggest, relaxed behavior as he drinks from a sports drink, as he carefully eludes security to take the knife that he wants. The first time that this defendant shows any signs of being not with the program or having any kind of problem is when he encounters police, when he is caught on Route 1 with a dead girl's underwear and a bloody box cutter, when it served his purpose to behave that way. And I would suggest to the court, without going into all the details, that there is an overwhelming thread throughout the records in this case that this defendant is manipulative, that this defendant is incredibly narcissistic, that this defendant is capable of great harm and is capable of fooling people into misunderstanding who he is, that this is not a sick child, but that this is an incredibly disturbing young man. Your Honor, I want to return from the Miller factors to the crime that this defendant committed and to what it tells us about his inability for parole and for, frankly, what it tells us about what sort of a sentence he should receive. Because although it has gotten lost in the shuffle of Miller and Diachenko and everything that has come since, ultimately punishment is an appropriate goal of sentencing. And this is a crime that deserves punishment. Punishment within the bounds of the law, within the bounds of the state of the law in Massachusetts at this time. This crime was intended to violate Colleen Ritzer, to humiliate her, to torture and brutalize and take her life. This crime, the murder standing alone, I would suggest, justifies the maximum parole eligibility available to this court as to the murder charge. This is a first-degree murder committed with extreme atrocity and cruelty, and those words have perhaps never had quite so much meaning as in this case. This defendant could not have treated Colleen with more disdain solely in the acts of murdering her. The Commonwealth utterly respects the verdict of the jury with respect to what happened in the woods, but then much of that evidence, I would suggest to you, becomes part and parcel of the murder. It's undisputed that she was posed. It's undisputed that she was left in the way that she was left, both to humiliate her and to horrify those who were going to find her. There is no other reason to leave her the way that she was left. What she endured in terms of the murder alone is unimaginable. The strangulation was enough to kill her, but he didn't stop. At least 2 or 3 of those stab wounds were enough to kill her, but he didn't stop. He cut and he cut and he cut. That took some amount of time. It is unimaginable what she went through in that bathroom as to the murder alone, but the murder in this case doesn't stand alone. The defense seems to suggest that because he did all of these crimes to one person in one place, somehow they are not deserving of consecutive sentences, and I would respectfully disagree. Even in a situation where the Commonwealth were able to ask for life without parole, frankly, this is a case where I expect that we would ask for consecutive sentences as to the rape and armed robbery, even if they were only symbolic, because there has to be some acknowledgement of the additional pain and suffering that Colleen went through, particularly with respect to the aggravated rape in the bathroom, the additional humiliation and terror that she experienced. Nothing on the videos makes clear whether the defendant was actually masked when he went into the bathroom. Frankly, it's the Commonwealth's hope that he was, and that Colleen didn't know that the person raping her was a student, was one of the people to whom she had dedicated her entire life to helping, was the same young man who she had just told Sarah Giaquenta she thought was in her classroom trying to make a connection because she didn't know why else he would be there. What Colleen experienced in that bathroom is every woman's worst fear. Sexual assault is different. It changes the fabric of our society. It changes how women conduct themselves in the world, how they operate, how and where and when they can feel safe. Your Honor, with respect to the 2 youthful offender convictions, I think it's easy for them to get lost in the scope of the total horror that the defendant inflicted on Colleen in killing her. And sometimes the impact of those particular crimes is better seen in the small moments. Ms. Ritzer talked about having to be brought in to be told what happened to Colleen in the bathroom when the forensic evidence became available in January of 2014. And she talked about it in terms of that she knew when she came in. And she may well have known. But we saw 2 people, 2 parents who were already broken beyond repair, who were already shells of the people they had once been. And yet, as we delivered the news that Colleen had been raped in the bathroom, we saw a whole new wave of pain. We saw a whole other part of them die. It's not part and parcel of the same crime. It was another crime. It was another injury. I remember Peg Ritzer saying to me, how am I going to go home and tell my daughter this? It's different. It adds something. The defendant was convicted of the armed robbery of Colleen's underwear, a trophy or a token he took, as the Commonwealth's memo indicates, not because of remorse or regret he was feeling at the time of this crime, but as a way to relive it, as a way to memorialize what he'd done. And the Commonwealth did DNA testing on the underwear, both in furtherance of the case, but also so that we could confirm it was Colleen, so that we would never have to ask a witness on the stand to identify her underwear. But when we were going through all the physical evidence, showing it to the Ritzers so that they would be prepared to see it in the courtroom, when I pulled out Colleen's underwear from the bag, Peg Ritzer said she recognized it. Because Colleen was only 24 years old, and she was living at home, and her mom still did her laundry. And for Peg Ritzer to see that underwear and understand that it was torn from their daughter's body, that it was carried with the defendant, that it was on him when he was stopped in Topsfield, along with the bloody knife used to slaughter their daughter. That was another injury. That was more pain. That doesn't roll itself into any of the other crimes here, and that deserves its own punishment in this case. The Commonwealth is not asking for consecutive sentences as to those 2 crimes in respect for this court and in respect for the cautions that the SJC has issued in the cases and in the decisions in these cases. We are not trying to do an end run, but none of the cases cover the situation of a defendant who has committed separate and distinct crimes from murder, separate and distinct crimes that are deserving of punishment as well. Your Honor, in closing, I would just quote, and certainly as a prosecutor, I don't ever hope to be quoting from a dissenting opinion, but when I read the Miller decision, I was struck by language that the Chief Justice used in his dissenting opinion. Mercy toward the guilty can be a form of decency, and a maturing society may abandon harsh punishments that it comes to view as unnecessary or unjust. But decency is not the same as leniency. A decent society protects the innocent from violence. A mature society may determine that this requires removing those guilty of the most heinous murders from its midst, both as protection for its other members and as a concrete expression of its standards of decency. As judges, we have no basis for deciding that progress toward greater decency can move only in the direction of easing sanctions on the guilty. Our SJC has decided to ease sanctions on the guilty. The defendant will benefit from that. He will have a meaningful opportunity for parole. The Commonwealth is asking that that not happen for 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. 8 years before October 22nd, 2013, Philip Chism was 6 years old, and he was starting first grade. He was learning to read and learning to play soccer, and he had a baby sister. 4 years before October 22nd, 2013, Philip Chism was 10. He was living in Florida and enjoying the ocean for the first time. 2 years before October 22nd, 2013, Philip Chism was 12 years old. He was learning to play competitive soccer, and he was beginning to explore his interests in languages and drawing. And as we know all too well, on October 22nd, 2013, Philip Chism was 2 months or almost 2 months into 9th grade and 14 years old. The changes Philip Chism experienced in the years before October 22nd, 2013 will be dwarfed by the changes he experiences in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, in the next 30 years, in the next 40 years, and on. Now, that's why it matters that he was 14 on that day, not because it makes him more sympathetic or because it helps us understand what he did that day. Because the fact is, I don't know how anyone can say he or she understands what happened that day. As has been so well expressed here today, it's not to be understood. Not then, not now. The Commonwealth talks about possibilities, that there are other possibilities besides the explanation of mental illness, etc. And that is the whole point, Your Honor. The whole point is that we don't know. We can't know now. And as the years go by, it may be determined that there are reasons not to release Philip Chism, public safety reasons. And the life sentence on the murder and substantial sentences on the youthful offender convictions that the court is bound to impose will be there to ensure that that can happen. There's no suggestion here, not from us, that these crimes don't warrant severe penalties. But the sentences imposed must allow for the possibility of consideration of release. Because Philip Chism, and there's a reason, it's not just because the court said so. It's because Philip Chism will change and mature, and the understanding of what he did may grow and become clearer. The ability of society to address his actions and what drove them may get to the point where public safety can be guaranteed and he can re-enter the community as a contributing member of society. I know, and I'm going to acknowledge right now, that there are those in this room and those outside of it who feel in the most profound way that Philip Chism can never be allowed to leave prison. and that that very possibility dishonors the tragic loss that has been suffered, and that the safety of the public can never be sufficiently assured. To those people, I do venture to say, I understand those feelings. I understand, but our society and our highest courts tell us that there is too much we don't understand about human nature and about development and how life changes to absolutely close the door to the possibility of evolution and change. So, as we know, the U.S. Supreme Court and the Supreme Judicial Court have recognized this in ruling that life without parole sentences for juveniles are in violation of the U.S. and Mass constitutions. Now, this development in the law is not some radical departure historically. Before 1996, let's remember that the juvenile courts had the authority to determine whether or not juveniles charged with first-degree murder would be tried as adults and punished as adults, or treated as juveniles and subject to commitment to DYS. It was only for a period of 16 years that juveniles convicted of first-degree murder were sentenced to mandatory life without parole, which of course now has been ruled to be unconstitutional. And this is a good moment to recognize that Philip Chism, at 14, was younger at the time of these crimes than any juvenile homicide defendant convicted of first-degree murder during those 16 years. The only 14-year-old that is convicted of first-degree murder since 1996, and in recent history, as far as I can tell. I wouldn't say that absolutely, but as far as I can tell. In Diachenko, the SJC told us, simply put, because the brain of a juvenile is not fully developed, either structurally or functionally, by the age of 18, a judge cannot find with confidence that a particular offender at that point in time is irretrievably depraved. And we know from the amicus brief, this is by the AMA and the APA in Miller v. Alabama, that each time this court, that is the U.S. Supreme Court, has examined the constitutional limitations of imposing severe penalties on juvenile offenders, the scientific research on the development of the adolescent brain has grown. It's as simple, Your Honor, as saying we don't know what we don't know, but what we may yet come to understand as time passes. Certainly the fact that the SJC has ruled that mandatory life without parole sentences and de facto or the functional equivalent of life without parole sentences are unconstitutional in the case of first-degree murder convictions means that the same result can't be accomplished by sentences on the youthful offender indictments. In Brown, the SJC cited the Null case out of Iowa with approval, and Null specifically condemned the idea of a geriatric release as not providing a meaningful opportunity to demonstrate the maturity and rehabilitation required to obtain release and re-enter society as required by Graham. Now, despite the tone, I would say, of the Commonwealth's argument and memorandum and the pre-sentence investigation, Philip Chism's life didn't begin on October 22nd, 2013. Who he was before that day cannot be reconciled with his actions on the day of the crimes. This is all the more reason to be sure that there exists a door that can be opened to the possibility of release in the future. The possibility, Your Honor, of Philip Chism being different isn't just theoretical. He was different. He was different from what those acts suggest. The witnesses from Tennessee and Danvers testified consistently that he was well-behaved, thoughtful, nice, kind, respectful, smart. He had strong interests. He was an avid reader. He's a learner of languages, and he was embraced by those around him. So what happened? What happened? And that's it. We stand here today not understanding We don't know. We know that there is evidence that his brain is different from his peers, or at least a group of similarly aged teens. Different in ways that academic researchers have correlated to differences seen in the brains of individuals suffering from schizophrenia. We know that brain imaging is advancing the understanding of mental illness and human behavior, both in terms of normal human behavior and in illness. We know that in our lifetimes, we've seen dramatic changes in society as technology develops at lightning speed. What we don't know is how research and improved tools, as well as the changes in Philip Chism himself, as time goes by, might help us to understand what happened to this 14-year-old youth. Not only to understand what happened to him, but to ensure that he won't hurt anyone ever again. The Commonwealth seems to rely heavily on his failure to take medication one morning when he was being released from Worcester State Hospital to return to court, to suggest some strategic taking or refusing of medication, I presume in the attempt to discredit the possibility that mental health treatment might address what led to his acts on October 22nd, 2013. But the fact is, he's taken the medication almost without fail, and the improvement in his mood and behavior has been well documented by the clinicians both at Worcester State Hospital and DYS. And I'm not here retrying the psychiatric issues that were tried at trial. The issue is no longer what was his state of mind on that day. The question is, what happened to him, what is happening to him, and what might we learn in the future as the years go by. No one is saying that substantial sentences should not be imposed on the youthful offender convictions, or that parole eligibility on those offenses must mirror that of the parole eligibility on the murder conviction. In its memo, the Commonwealth argues that concurrent sentences, well, and in its argument certainly, would fail to hold the juvenile accountable for those additional crimes, but I suggest that that's not the case. A concurrent sentence need not be coterminous, and it can sufficiently satisfy important sentencing considerations without violating Article 26. But the overall parole eligibility must allow for a meaningful opportunity for release. In order to accomplish this, the court should impose concurrent sentences that allow for parole eligibility no later than when Philip Chism reaches the age of 40. In our memo, we discussed some ways to think about that, since there's no ruling yet on, were the court, for example, wanting to do what the Commonwealth has suggested, which is impose, and I would suggest what also the Ritzer family has suggested, the maximum penalty allowable by law. The question then, if that's what the court decides it wants to do, the question is, what is that? And we don't have a number for what that means. We have some guidance and some ways to think about it. Certainly not a geriatric release, we know that, and not the sort of number suggested by the Commonwealth, since 50 years, or the age of 64, is comparable to the sentences determined by other jurisdictions to be the functional equivalent of life without parole. Those cases are cited by the SJC in the footnote in Costa and referred to by the Commonwealth in its memo on page 33. Those sentences specifically were a 50-year sentence, 52.5-year sentence, and a 45-year sentence in the Bear Cloud case. Costa itself, I'd suggest, is not apropos to the situation we face here in this case, because it's a case before, when the parole board was still aggregating from and after sentences. So the specific discussion in that case doesn't apply here. In the words of the U.S. Supreme Court, an unacceptable likelihood exists, I would say in these difficult cases, that the brutality or cold-blooded nature of any particular crime would overpower mitigating arguments based on youth as a matter of course. And this is what the court here must guard against. And I'm going to close here with some thoughts from the amicus brief in the Miller v. Alabama case. And it's the amicus submitted by juvenile court judges. So here's the guidance the juvenile court judges in the Miller case give us. They said, but amici firmly believe that it is impossible to tell at the time of sentencing which juveniles will prove capable of reform. The fact that a person committed a crime as a juvenile, even a heinous crime, does not tell us who that person will be as an adult. The brief goes on to point out that amici strongly believe that juvenile offenders, including those convicted on homicide offenses, deserve an opportunity to turn their lives around, and that the best time to evaluate whether they have successfully done so is after they have had time to mature, not when they are initially sentenced. Based on decades of experience sentencing juvenile offenders, amici simply do not believe it is possible to tell which youths will change and which will not at the time of their initial sentencing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oka. The court will do its best to make a sentencing decision by 2 o'clock today. Court will be in recess.
All right. Court will be.
Level our law allows. This court will impose a
is now in session. You may be seated.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. We're back on the record with the Chism matters.
Thank you, Ms. Draper. The court will issue a written sentencing memorandum after sentencing. I first want to say that I appreciate and understand the reasons behind the Commonwealth's recommendation and the defendant's recommendation, and have taken both seriously into account. When something terrible happens, people will often say it could always be worse. It is difficult for this court to imagine what could be worse for an individual or a family to endure than the brutal and senseless murder of Colleen Ritzer. Colleen Ritzer lived a life of quiet heroism. That's what most teachers do. Henry Adams observed that a teacher affects eternity. She can never tell where her influence stops. Colleen Ritzer's parents, more than most, have learned the reach of their daughter's influence, but at a cost no parent should have to endure. Colleen Ritzer loved her job, her family, friends, students, and co-workers. The depth of that love was manifest today. She was loved and valued by her family, friends, students, and so many people whose lives she touched. To paraphrase from the book of Proverbs, who can find a woman of valor? Her value is far beyond pearls. The defendant, Philip Chism, did not start life on third base. The court points this out not by way of excuse or even explanation, but because it is true. Sometimes his father was living in the family home, sometimes he wasn't. Although the defendant's father was not present during the trial, his presence was still palpable. He was abusive, harsh, unfaithful, and unpredictable. The defendant's mother worked hard to provide for her family, emotionally and financially, with mixed success. After living in Tennessee and a brief stint in Florida with his father, the defendant moved to Danvers, Massachusetts with his mother and sisters in the late spring of 2013. He started as a freshman at Danvers High School that fall. While the extent or lack of extent of the defendant's mental health was the subject of exhaustive testimony at trial, the Commonwealth presented overwhelming evidence that the defendant had substantial capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct and had the substantial capacity to conform his conduct to the requirements of the law. The defendant was quiet, polite, athletic, and had no prior criminal record. Then, on October 22, 2013, he carefully and deliberately prepared to kill his math teacher. The school day ended at 1:55 p.m., but Colleen Ritzer, like thousands of other conscientious teachers, was not done with her workday. As was her practice, she stayed after school to make herself available for students who needed academic help, or just as student Autumn Cianci did that day, to spend time in her classroom seeking calmness in the midst of adolescence. Colleen Ritzer's practice was to arrive home late in the afternoon, chat with her mother, and then get to work planning for the next day's classes. Colleen Ritzer's mother testified so poignantly about how her daughter would come home and walk into her mom's home office and ask about her day, anxious for her turn to tell her mother about her own wonderful day preparing children for the world. There would be no mother-daughter chat that Tuesday afternoon. While Colleen's mother waited for her loving daughter, the defendant violently raped Colleen Ritzer. He viciously, brutally, and senselessly attacked Colleen in the girls' bathroom, just feet from the classroom, where she was in her second year of living her dream of being a teacher. When the defendant was finished in the bathroom, he put Colleen Ritzer inside a recycle bin, wheeled her to the woods, and pulled up her shirt, exposing her breasts. Thereafter, he spread her legs and inserted a large tree branch inside her. Colleen Ritzer was found dead hours later, after a frantic search by law enforcement. The jury found, to a moral certainty, that the defendant killed Colleen Ritzer and that he was criminally responsible for her murder. The court will impose a sentence in this case without emotion, passion, sympathy, or pity. But one cannot see and hear what this court has during the course of this case without feeling that the crashing waves of this tragedy will never wane. There is no, quote, right, end quote, sentence. No amount of prison time would ever be enough to be commensurate with this crime, and no math will ever erase the reality that this crime was committed by a 14-year-old boy. While this court is constitutionally required to consider that there is always the possibility of redemption, even if the defendant were to live a perfect life from this moment on, his repeated stab wounds to Colleen Ritzer's young body will remain indelible with Colleen Ritzer's family, friends, and community until the last person who knew Colleen Ritzer takes his or her last breath. Our Massachusetts Declaration of Rights and the United States Constitution require this court to consider the defendant's age, the possibility of rehabilitation, and the brain development of adolescence when imposing a sentence. This court also takes into consideration the nature and circumstances of the crime, public safety, general deterrence, the crime's impact on Colleen Ritzer and her family, and the risk of recidivism. I will punish the defendant for the murder of Colleen Ritzer, and I will punish him for the rape, as well as the armed robbery of the underpants she put on the morning of her death. But I may not utilize the horrific rape and robbery of Colleen Ritzer to punish the defendant for this unspeakable murder more than the law allows. Sentencing a human being to prison comes with a solemn obligation to craft a sentence no more or less than justice requires. This inexact process is central to the maintenance of our social compact and part of the core of the concept of ordered liberty. This court will impose the mandatory life sentence for the murder of Colleen Ritzer and set a parole eligibility date of 25 years, the highest level our law allows. This court will impose a concurrent sentence of 40 years to 40 years and 1 day for the rape of Colleen Ritzer and a concurrent sentence of 40 years to 40 years and 1 day for the armed robbery. In imposing a sentence for the rape at a date in excess of the parole eligibility date for the murder, the court is not suggesting that the rape, as heinous as it was more egregious than the murder. Rather, this court is constitutionally obligated to set a parole date no more than 25 years for her murder. While Colleen Ritzer's rape and murder were inextricably intertwined, this court may not punish the defendant with more prison time for the rape than justice demands for the purposes of avoiding constitutional limitations imposed by our Massachusetts Declaration of Rights as interpreted by a Supreme Judicial Court for the murder committed by a juvenile. Sentence may be imposed.
Philip Chism, on indictment number 2013-1446001. The jury, having returned a verdict of guilty of murder in the first degree on deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity and cruelty, you will hearken to the sentence the court has awarded against you. The court, having duly considered your offenses, it is hereby ordered that you be committed to the Department of Youth Services until the age of 21, and furthermore committed to the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar Junction for the period of not less than 25 years and not more than life, and that you stand committed in execution of this sentence. On indictment 2013-1447002, the jury, having returned a verdict of guilty as a youthful offender of armed robbery, you will hearken to the sentence the court has awarded against you.
the court having duly considered your offenses. It is hereby ordered that you be committed to the Department of Youth Services until the age of 21, and furthermore committed to the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar Junction for the period of not less than 40 years and not more than 40 years and 1 day, and that this sentence is to run concurrent with the sentence imposed on indictment number 2013-1446001. On indictment number 2014-109, the jury, having returned a verdict of guilty as a youthful offender on the charge of aggravated rape, you will hearken to the sentence the court has awarded against you. The court, having duly considered your offenses, it is hereby ordered that you be committed to the Department of Youth Services until the age of 21, and furthermore committed to the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar Junction for the period of not less than 40 years and not more than 40 years and 1 day, and that this sentence is to be concurrent with the sentence imposed on indictment number 2013-1446 and 2013-1447-002, and that you stand committed in execution of this sentence. The minimus shall reflect 857 days credit towards the sentences imposed this day. There is also a $90 victim witness fee assessed to you this day. I must also inform you, sir, you have the right to appeal to the Appellate Division of the Superior Court. If you wish to do so, you must do so in 10 days and in writing. Sir, you stand committed. Custody, Mr. Officer.
All rise. Court is in recess.
Be seated if you wish.
Everybody all set? On the day that Colleen Ritzer's life was cruelly taken from her, the sentence for first-degree murder for a person over 14 without parole. 2 months later, on Christmas Eve, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court redefined justice for this family and many others. In their Dyachenko decision, the Massachusetts SJC retroactively eliminated life without parole for juvenile murderers. This ruling went beyond the U.S. Supreme Court's Miller v. Alabama decision that stated that life without parole may not be automatically imposed upon a juvenile. In Miller, the U.S. Supreme Court allowed for individualized sentencing for juveniles. Our SJC has departed from that principle and has removed that discretion to impose an individualized sentence, even where the facts demonstrate, in the words of the Miller Court, irretrievable depravity. Oftentimes, when courts make decisions, the impact of those decisions can seem very remote and detached from our everyday lives. As we stand here today, I want everyone to see the impact of that decision. This family, who has suffered beyond measure, cannot close the book on this case. They cannot move forward with the knowledge that the person who took their precious daughter's life is not forever gone from their lives. Instead, they move forward knowing that at some point in time, they will sit at a parole board hearing, perhaps multiple times, and return to the most horrific and devastating event of their lives. As district attorney and a longtime board member of the Massachusetts Office of Victim Assistance, it is my duty, as well as my privilege, to advocate for victims of crime. An important way that is accomplished is to ensure that defendants are held accountable for their actions, and while nothing can restore their loss, a sense of justice is essential to the healing process for crime victims. Murder does not claim one victim. As we heard in the courtroom today, many people, family, friends, co-workers, students, and whole communities were victims of this murder. Murder tears at our sense of security and community. It violates our social contract in a fundamental way. It leaves a hole that can never be filled. As Assistant District Attorney McDougall said, we took the defendant's age into account throughout the process and in our recommendation to the court. The evidence in this case is undeniable. The defendant acted deliberately, singularly, and maliciously before, during, and after the horrific events of that day. In closing, the defendant's actions were willful, deliberate, and cruel in taking the life, an innocent life, and should result in the permanent loss of liberty upon conviction. Before I let the Ritzers speak, I want to once more, because it's very important to me and to the criminal justice system in Essex County, point out Maureen Leal, Victim Witness Advocate Director in Superior Court ADA, Melissa Woodard, Assistant, that I can give them. Peggy?
We are devastated and feel betrayed with Judge Lowy's inability to give 3 consecutive life sentences without the eligibility of parole to the individual that took Colleen's life in such a horrific manner. We are disgusted and personally offended with the defense's repulsive recommendation that Colleen's killer be parole eligible within 15 years, therefore putting him back into society at age 29 to kill again. The defense's legal maneuvering is despicable and demonstrates utmost disrespect for our daughter and sister, Colleen's life. Evil cannot be rehabilitated. Today's sentence is unacceptable and the laws must be changed. Although we very much appreciate this court's commitment to seeking justice for Colleen, today's sentence did not achieve that goal. We recognize that Judge David Lowy was faced with a difficult decision, one that was unfairly restricted by the imprudent actions of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court that decided juveniles who deliberately commit heinous crimes cannot be sentenced to life without parole. Colleen's family, friends, students, and those who admired her have been given a life sentence without parole, but not the individual who committed the heinous act. This is wrong and unjust. Today's sentencing does not conclude the legal process. The journey to ensure justice for Colleen has just begun. Because of the SJC restrictions, our family will be forced to attend parole hearings beginning in 38 years, which is simply unimaginable to us. We will have to relive that day with every hearing. As Tom and I age, Colleen's brother and sister, Dan and Laura, will assume this responsibility. However, we want to be very clear. At every parole hearing, our family's voice, Colleen's voice, will be heard.
Judges must have the discretion to impose a prudent sentence depending upon the circumstances. Based upon the testimony we heard in this case, we, and many others, believe that the juvenile mind is capable of distinguishing right from wrong. Each day, millions of juveniles go to school and learn and to be inspired, not with planned malicious intentions. The logic of the SJC is flawed and misguided. Therefore, judges must have the discretion to sentence juvenile offenders to life without parole, particularly in those cases such as this, during which undisputed and horrific evidence was presented. Although this individual parole amounts to cruel and unusual punishment for Colleen's loved ones, the notion of second chance should not be applicable in this case. Due to the intentional and thoroughly planned actions of this individual, Colleen cannot be provided a second chance, and neither should the individual who callously and without remorse took her life. The decision of the SJC is not only disrespectful to Colleen, but also to those who love her. The SJC's decision was a betrayal to all victims and their families. We are hopeful the governor and the legislature will recognize the great injustice imposed by the SJC and remedy this decision that extends rights to criminals and disregards the rights of victims and their families. While such an amended law will not provide justice for Colleen, it will protect future victims and their families. We pledge, as Colleen's loved ones, to apply the same vigor for life that Colleen demonstrated every day to righting this moral wrong.
The Ritzers are not going to take any questions at this time, and I ask that you respect that. They have been through what no family should go through emotionally for the last 2 years, and today was extremely difficult. I'll answer a couple questions before we conclude.
It sounds like, in your view, he deserved nothing less than life without parole.
The SJC, again, redefined justice for victims who thought they had closure in 2013. Certainly, given the facts of this case, which could not be more horrific, I believe somebody who commits murder in the first degree should not have parole eligibility.
If Chism is denied parole after serving the 4 years, how many times after that is he eligible again? In fact, how many times does his family have to go through this?
Every 5 years, someone can petition for parole there.
When they handed down the sentence, they said that he was being committed to DYS custody. Does that mean he's going back to the same facility where he allegedly attacked the other woman?
That's a question I'm not sure how they're going to handle that. I don't know. I know there's very few DYS facilities, so if he's going back there, that's not something I'm aware
So you
of.
just know he's in DYS custody, that's it?
Until 21, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there anything you guys plan on doing or can do to try to, get what you guys want in terms of a longer sentence or not having parole, or are your hands tied at this point?
Well, the law is the law, as Mr. Ritzer said. I am sure there's going to be an extremely sincere effort to get to the governor, to the legislature, and the court can always change their opinions as they've done, as they have in the past. So this is just, you can't have a more horrific set of facts than this case bore out as evidence and a jury heard.
Did you say the SJC changed this law 2 months after the
Miller v. Alabama. They changed the law again on December 24, 2013.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have copies of the Ritzer statement.
Thank you.